Is your bed big enough for two? When 8-year-old Owen asked that question, the room fell silent. His father, Nathan, a widowed engineer still sleeping on one side of a king-size bed 3 years after losing his wife, didn't know how to answer. And Victoria Hale, his former boss, the woman who'd built walls so high around her heart that no one dared climb them, suddenly realized this wasn't just about romance anymore. This was about whether broken people could become a family, whether grief could make room for joy, whether love gets a second chance when you've already buried your first. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The champagne glass felt wrong in Nathan Cole's hand. Not because it was expensive, though it certainly was, crystal stem catching the light from chandeliers that probably cost more than his annual salary. Not because he didn't belong at Morrison and Fletcher's annual winter gala. He'd been invited, his name printed on heavy cardstock stock alongside 200 other employees. The glass felt wrong because he'd been holding it for 47 minutes without taking a single sip, using it as a prop, a shield, something to do with his hands while he counted down the minutes until he could reasonably leave without seeming rude. 9:30. Owen would be asleep by now. Mrs. Chen next door had strict rules about bedtime, and his son knew better than to test her. Still, Nathan checked his phone for the third time in 10 minutes, the screen stubbornly blank. No emergencies, no excuses to slip out early. He shifted his weight, tugging at his tie, a blue striped number he'd found at a department store clearance rack 2 years ago. It didn't quite match his suit, but it was good enough. Everything about Nathan Cole these days was good enough. Good enough father, good enough engineer, good enough at pretending he wasn't still sleeping on one side of a king-size bed, leaving space for a ghost. You look like you're planning an escape route. The voice came from his left, warm and slightly amused. Nathan turned to find Victoria Hale standing beside him, so close he could smell her perfume. Something subtle and expensive that matched the deep emerald gown that transformed his notoriously severe boss into someone he barely recognized. No, I was just... He fumbled, nearly dropping the champagne. Relax, Nathan. I'm not timing your bathroom breaks tonight. She smiled, a real one that didn't quite reach her eyes. We're off the clock. Victoria Hale, Director of Engineering Operations, the woman who'd once made a senior architect cry during a project review, who wore exclusively gray and navy to the office, kept her dark hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked painful, and had a reputation for leaving meetings early because she didn't have time for incompetence. Tonight she looked almost human. You came alone, she observed, accepting a fresh champagne flute from a passing waiter and dismissing Nathan's half-empty glass with a practiced glance. No date? My son's 8, Nathan said, the excuse automatic. Couldn't find a babysitter who'd stay past 10 on a Saturday. And his mother? The question landed like a stone in still water. Most people at Morrison and Fletcher knew, office gossip being what it was, but Victoria had only joined the company 18 months ago, long after the flowers had stopped arriving, after HR had stopped checking in, after Nathan had perfected the art of saying, "It's just me and Owen now," without his voice breaking. She passed away, Nathan said quietly. 3 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. He waited for the usual response. The head tilt. The soft, "I'm so sorry." The quick pivot to safer topics. Instead, Victoria took a long sip of champagne and stared out at the ballroom where their colleagues swayed to a string quartet's rendition of something classical and forgettable. My father died when I was 12, she said finally. Heart attack. Dropped dead in the middle of a board meeting. Everyone said he didn't suffer, like that was supposed to make it better. Like the speed of it somehow made him less gone. Nathan blinked. In its 18 months of quarterly reviews and project status meetings, he'd never heard Victoria Hale say anything remotely personal. I'm sorry, he offered, the words inadequate but genuine. Don't be. It was 26 years ago. She turned to face him fully, and Nathan was struck by how different she looked without the armor of fluorescent office lighting and quarterly revenue pressure. Softer. Tired in a way she never let show at work. But you never really stop missing them, do you? The people who leave holes. No, Nathan agreed. You just get better at walking around the holes without falling in. Victoria's laugh was quiet and unexpected. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me all night. Do you know how many people have asked me about Q4 projections at a Christmas party? 7? 11. I counted. She shook her head, some of the severity creeping back into her expression. They see the title and forget there's a person underneath, or maybe they just don't care. Nathan studied her, really looked, perhaps for the first time since she'd joined Morrison and Fletcher. Mid-30s, he guessed. Sharp cheekbones that made her look stern in poor lighting, eyes that were green or hazel depending on the angle. No wedding ring, no mention of a husband or boyfriend in any of the office gossip that occasionally drifted to his corner of the engineering floor. You hide it well, he said. Hide what? That you're lonely. The words escaped before he could stop them, honest in a way that would have been inappropriate 47 minutes ago when they were still boss and employee. But something about the champagne, the one sip he'd finally taken, and the late hour and the string quartet playing something slow and melancholic had stripped away his usual filters. Victoria's expression shifted. Not anger exactly. More like recognition. Like he'd named something she'd been carrying in silence for so long she'd forgotten it had a weight. I could say the same about you, she replied softly. I'm not lonely. The denial was automatic. I have Owen. Work. Mrs. Chen bakes us cookies every Sunday. I'm surviving, Victoria finished, which isn't the same as living. Trust me, I wrote the manual. Nathan wanted to argue, wanted to explain that survival was enough, that asking for more felt greedy when Owen had already lost so much. But Victoria was watching him with those two knowing eyes, and the ballroom suddenly felt too small, too warm, too full of people who'd never understand what it meant to wake up at 3 a.m, reaching for someone who wasn't there. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because Owen needed it, or work required it, or your dead wife would have approved. Just because you, Nathan Cole, not Nathan the father, or Nathan the engineer, actually wanted it. The question hit harder than it should have. Nathan opened his mouth to answer and found he couldn't. Because the truth was, he didn't remember. The last 3 years had been a blur of parent-teacher conferences and project deadlines and folding tiny socks while pretending he didn't sometimes forget what color Sarah's eyes had been, whether they were blue or gray or somewhere in between. I don't know, he admitted. Me neither. Victoria drained her champagne and set the empty glass on a nearby table with more force than necessary. I work 70 hours a week. I have a penthouse apartment with a view of the harbor that I barely see because I'm never home before dark. I own 14 identical gray suits because making decisions about clothing feels like a waste of cognitive resources. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. My therapist says I'm conflict avoidant in my personal life while being aggressively confrontational in professional settings, which is apparently a fancy way of saying I'm a coward who hides behind spreadsheets. You're not a coward, Nathan said. You're careful. There's a difference. Is there? Victoria turned to face him fully. Because from where I'm standing, careful just looks like scared with better packaging. The string quartet shifted into something slower, and couples drifted onto the dance floor in pairs. Nathan watched them, colleagues who'd probably spent the last hour discussing market forecasts and resource allocation now swaying together like they'd forgotten the world existed beyond the circle of each other's arms. My wife loved to dance, Nathan heard himself say. Sarah. She'd drag me to weddings, company parties, anywhere with a live band. I hated it at first. 2 left feet, terrible rhythm, but she'd laugh every time I stepped on her toes. And eventually I stopped caring about looking stupid because making her happy was better than looking competent. What changed? Victoria asked quietly. She got sick, and then dancing didn't seem important anymore. Except now Owen asks why we never dance at home. And I can't explain that the last time I slow danced with someone, she weighed 90 pounds and could barely stand. And I held her in our living room at 2 a.m. while she cried because she knew she was running out of time. The words came out raw, unfiltered. Nathan hadn't talked about those final months with anyone, not Mrs. Chen, not the grief counselor the hospital had recommended, certainly not Owen, who'd been 5 and understood only that Mommy was sick and then Mommy was gone. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She held out her hand. Dance with me, she said. What? You heard me. Dance. Here. Now. Not because it'll fix anything, or because it makes sense. Just because we're both tired of being careful. Nathan stared at her outstretched hand. Victoria, I don't think that's the point. Don't think. Just do something because you want to for once in the last 3 years. Her eyes were challenging him, but there was something else there too. A vulnerability that matched his own. A recognition that they were both standing at the edge of the same cliff, wondering if jumping would feel like flying or falling. Nathan took her hand. The string quartet was playing something classical. Vivaldi, maybe. Or one of those composers whose names all sounded the same to Nathan's untrained ear. It didn't matter. What mattered was the way Victoria's hand fit in his, warm and steady. The way she moved closer, close enough that he could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Evidence of smiles she rarely showed at work. They swayed more than danced. Nathan was rusty, and Victoria admitted she'd learned ballroom basics at some mandatory cotillion her mother had insisted on when she was 14 and hated every second. But somehow they found a rhythm, small steps in a small circle while the rest of the party continued around them. This is wildly inappropriate, Victoria murmured after a minute. I'm technically your supervisor. You said we're off the clock. HR would disagree. Then it's a good thing I'm not planning to file a complaint. Nathan surprised himself by smiling. Unless you're a terrible dancer, then all bets are off. Victoria laughed, actually laughed, the sound bright and unexpected. I think we're both equally terrible. It balances out. Perfect mediocrity, the Morrison and Fletcher way. Don't let the executives hear you say that. They'll put it on a motivational poster. They fell silent after that, just moving together while the music swelled and other couples orbited around them. Nathan became hyper-aware of the places where they touched, her hand in his other hand resting carefully, respectfully at her waist, the slight pressure of her fingers on his shoulder. It had been so long since he'd been this close to another person. So long since touch meant something other than Owen crawling into bed after a nightmare or Mrs. Chen patting his arm sympathetically when she caught him staring at nothing on particularly hard days. Owen's lucky to have you, Victoria said quietly. The comment pulled Nathan from his thoughts. What makes you say that? Because you're here, at a party you clearly don't want to attend, wearing a tie that doesn't quite match your suit, counting the minutes until you can go home. But you came anyway because showing up matters, because being present matters, even when it's hard. That's the kind of thing good fathers do. Nathan felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Some days I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Raising him alone. Sarah was the good parent, patient, creative. She'd turned grocery shopping into an adventure, bedtime into story time. I just try not to mess up too badly. You think she didn't feel that way? Victoria asked. Every parent questions whether they're doing it right. The difference is you don't have anyone to share the doubt with. You carry it alone. Is that what your therapist says? That's what I say. The therapist charges $200 an hour to nod sympathetically while I figure it out myself. Nathan laughed despite himself. Sounds like a good gig. The best scam in modern medicine, Victoria agreed. Then more seriously, do you ever talk to anyone about Sarah, about being a single parent, about any of it? I talked to Owen. He's 8. Mrs. Chen, then. She's your neighbor, not your therapist. I don't need therapy, Nathan said, the defensiveness automatic. I'm fine. Victoria pulled back slightly, enough to meet his eyes. Nathan, you're at a Christmas party holding a champagne glass you didn't drink from for 47 minutes. Yes, I was counting. Looking like you'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. You're not fine. You're functional. Which is impressive, honestly, but it's not the same thing. The observation should have stung. Instead, it felt like relief. Like someone finally seen what he'd been trying to hide. I don't know how to be anything else, Nathan admitted. Fine was never the goal. The goal was making sure Owen didn't fall apart, making sure he still did his homework and brushed his teeth and remembered to laugh sometimes. If I fall apart too, then what? Who catches him? Maybe that's why you need to let someone catch you first, Victoria said softly. The song ended. The quartet transitioned seamlessly into something up-tempo and forgettable. Around them, couples separated or drew closer depending on their preferences. Nathan and Victoria stood still, hands still joined, neither quite ready to let go. I should go, Nathan said, though he didn't move. Check on Owen. Pay Mrs. Chen. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. He's got a science project due Monday, and we haven't even started the poster board. Of photosynthesis or the solar system? How did you... Third grade science curriculum is pretty standardized, Victoria said. And I may have volunteered at a children's science fair last year. Company community outreach requirement. 16 poster boards about volcanoes and plant cells. I still have nightmares about construction paper. Nathan smiled. Owen chose constellations. He's obsessed with stars. Sarah used to take him to the observatory every month, and now he sleeps with glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling and talks about wanting to be an astronaut. That's wonderful. It's expensive, Nathan corrected, then immediately regretted the honesty. Sorry, that sounded real, Victoria finished. It sounded real, which is refreshing. She hesitated, then asked, "What if I helped?" "With what?" "The poster board, the science project." She released his hand and Nathan felt the absence immediately. "I'm not doing anything tomorrow, and I have an embarrassing amount of craft supplies left over from last year's volunteer work. Construction paper, markers, glitter glue, the works." Nathan stared at her. "You want to help my 8-year-old son with his science homework? Is that weird?" "That's weird. Forget I said anything." "No, it's just..." Nathan struggled to find the right words. "Why?" Victoria's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing her face. "Because you looked at me tonight like I was a person instead of a title. Because I haven't done anything just because I wanted to in longer than I can remember. And because..." She stopped, seemed to reconsider, then continued. "Because I'm tired of going home to an empty apartment and pretending that 70-hour work weeks are fulfilling. Maybe helping a kid glue pictures of constellations to poster board isn't going to change my life, but it sounds better than Sunday night spreadsheets." Nathan knew he should say no, should maintain boundaries, should remember that Victoria was his boss, that mixing personal and professional was asking for trouble, that Owen didn't need the confusion of new people entering their carefully controlled world. He said yes anyway. "Owen gets excited about projects," Nathan warned. "Fair warning, he'll probably talk your ear off about red giants and supernovas, and he might ask you approximately 700 questions about why Pluto isn't a planet anymore." "I can handle curious 8-year-olds, Victoria said. "It's the incurious 40-year-olds I struggle with." They exchanged numbers, a transaction that felt far more significant than it should have. Nathan programmed her contact as Victoria, work, and immediately felt ridiculous about the parenthetical. Victoria didn't add a qualifier, just his name in her phone alongside a time and address for tomorrow afternoon. "Thank you," Nathan said. "For this? For listening? For..." "Don't," Victoria interrupted gently. "Don't make it more than it is. Two lonely people having an honest conversation at a terrible party, followed by a slightly less lonely Sunday afternoon helping a kid learn about space. That's all." But they both knew it was more than that. Knew that something had shifted between them, something that couldn't be completely unshifted even if they tried. The carefully maintained distance between boss and employee, between two people who'd mastered the art of moving through the world alone, had cracked just enough to let light in. Nathan left the gala at 10:15, the earliest exit that wouldn't seem rude. He drove home through streets decorated with Christmas lights, past houses where families were probably settling in for the night, parents tucking in children who had 2 of everything that Owen had 1 of. He found Mrs. Chen reading in his living room, a mystery novel with a lurid cover featuring a woman in an evening gown running from a burning mansion. She looked up when he entered, marking her place with a receipt. "Owen went down at 8:30, she reported. "No trouble. We watched that documentary about Mars rovers, and he showed me his constellation chart. That boy's got a good brain. He gets it from his mother," Nathan said automatically. Mrs. Chen stood, gathering her book and reading glasses. "Maybe, but he gets his heart from you." She patted Nathan's arm in that sympathetic way she had. "You look different tonight, less tired." "It's the same face, Mrs. Chen." Same face, different eyes. Something happened. Nathan thought about denying it, but Mrs. Chen had known him for 5 years, had brought casseroles every week for months after Sarah died, had watched Owen grow from a confused 5-year-old to a curious 8-year-old who asked questions about everything from black holes to why people had to die. "I met someone," he said carefully. "Just talking, nothing serious. But she's coming over tomorrow to help with Owen's science project. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. She? My boss, actually, from work. Your boss is coming to your house to do arts and crafts. When you say it like that, it sounds weird. It is weird, Mrs. Chen said bluntly, but weird isn't always bad. Sometimes weird is just different. And different might be exactly what you need. After she left, Nathan checked on Owen. His son was sprawled across his bed in the way only children could manage, arms flung wide, mouth slightly open, the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling casting faint green light across his face. Nathan adjusted the blanket, careful not to wake him, and stood there longer than necessary, watching his son breathe. Someone's coming to help with your project tomorrow, Nathan whispered. I think you'll like her. She's smart. Kind of scary at work, but different outside of it. Like maybe she's been hiding the good parts because she thought she had to. Owen shifted in his sleep, mumbling something that sounded like Neptune has 14 moons before settling again. Nathan smiled and backed out of the room, leaving the door cracked the way Owen preferred. In his own bedroom, their bedroom, still decorated exactly how Sarah had left it, Nathan stood at the window and looked out at the December sky. The stars were faint this close to the city, washed out by streetlights and suburban glow, but he could make out Orion's belt if he looked hard enough. Sarah had loved stars too, had taken Owen to the observatory once a month like it was church. Nathan had always been too busy with work, with projects and deadlines and climbing the ladder at Morrison and Fletcher. He'd missed so many of those trips, telling himself there would be time later, that childhood lasted forever, that dying young was something that happened to other people's wives. I danced tonight, he said to the empty room, to the ghost of Sarah that sometimes felt more present than absent, with someone new. And I'm terrified that means I'm forgetting you. But I'm more terrified of Owen growing up watching me survive instead of live. The stars didn't answer. They never did. But somehow, standing there in the dark, Nathan felt lighter than he had in 3 years. Like maybe Victoria had been right. Maybe careful was just another word for scared. And maybe it was time to stop being so afraid of what came next. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number that resolved into Victoria's contact once he opened it. Thank you for tonight. I haven't felt like a person instead of a position in longer than I care to admit. See you tomorrow. V. Nathan typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on something simple. Thank you for seeing me. Both versions. N. He set the phone on the nightstand and lay down on his side of the bed. The right side, the side he'd claimed 37 nights after Sarah died because sleeping in the middle felt like giving up. Tomorrow, Victoria Hale would come to his house, would meet his son, would probably realize that Nathan's life was a careful construction of managed chaos, held together with post-it note reminders and frozen dinners and the desperate hope that he was doing enough. Tomorrow, things would change. He could feel it the way he'd felt the first rain of winter earlier that week, the air shifting before the storm arrived. But tonight, Nathan Cole, widower, father, engineer, survivor, closed his eyes and let himself imagine what it might feel like to stop surviving and start living. To dance not because his dying wife needed the memory, but because he wanted to remember what joy felt like. To make room in his carefully controlled life for something unexpected. To believe that hearts didn't split when they expanded, that love didn't divide, that maybe, just maybe, broken people could build something beautiful from the pieces. Outside, the December wind rattled the windows. Inside, Nathan fell asleep with the faint ghost of Victoria's perfume still clinging to his suit jacket, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't dream about Sarah dying. He dreamed about dancing. Victoria arrived at 2:30 on Sunday afternoon, pulling up to Nathan's house in a sleek black sedan that looked conspicuously expensive against the backdrop of his modest suburban neighborhood. Through the living room window, Nathan watched her sit in the driver's seat for a full minute, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at his front door like it might bite her. Owen pressed his face against the glass beside him. Is that her? Yes, buddy. And maybe don't mention the car, or how nice it is compared to ours. Why not? Because Nathan struggled for an explanation that wouldn't require a discussion about salary disparities and workplace hierarchies. Because it might make her uncomfortable. But it's just a car. You're right, it's just a car. Nathan ruffled his son's hair, which immediately sprang back into its characteristic mess. Ready to meet her? Owen nodded, then hesitated. Dad? Is she your girlfriend? The question landed like a punch. What? No, we work together. She's helping with your project. Mrs. Chen said you met someone. Mrs. Chen needs to mind her own business, Nathan muttered, then caught himself. I mean, yes, I met someone, but meeting someone and having a girlfriend are very different things. But you like her. I barely know her, Owen. His son gave him a look that was far too knowing for 8 years old. You're wearing the blue shirt. The one Mommy said made your eyes look nice. Nathan glanced down at the button-down he'd changed into 3 times before settling on this one. The shirt was old, bought 7 years ago for a work conference Sarah had insisted he needed to look professional for. She'd chosen the color, said it brought out the blue in his eyes that usually looked gray. It's just a shirt, Nathan said weakly. Uh-huh. Owen grinned in that insufferable way children had when they knew they'd caught adults in a lie. She's pretty. I saw her picture on your phone this morning when you were making breakfast. You're 8. You're not supposed to be this observant. Mommy said I got it from you. Before Nathan could respond, Victoria finally emerged from her car, carrying 2 large shopping bags that clinked with the unmistakable sound of craft supplies. She'd dressed down from last night's gala elegance. Dark jeans, a cream sweater, hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual severe bun. But she still moved with that careful precision Nathan recognized from the office, each step measured, controlled. He opened the door before she could knock. Hi, Victoria said, slightly breathless. I may have overestimated how much poster board one constellation project requires, and I couldn't remember if you said markers or colored pencils, so I brought both. And glitter. Though if you have a no-glitter policy, I completely understand. That stuff spreads like a virus. We're pro-glitter in this house, Nathan assured her. Owen, come say hello. His son appeared at Nathan's elbow, studying Victoria with the same intense focus he applied to everything from homework to documentaries about the solar system. Victoria set down her bags and crouched to his eye level, a gesture Nathan hadn't expected but immediately appreciated. You must be Owen, she said. Your dad tells me you're an expert on constellations. I know 43, Owen replied, and I can find Orion's belt even in the city where there's light pollution. Impressive. I can barely find the Big Dipper. It's easy. You just look for the handle and the bowl. Want me to show you tonight after dinner? Victoria glanced up at Nathan, a question in her eyes. He gave the smallest shrug. Whatever you're comfortable with. She turned back to Owen and smiled. I'd like that. But first, we have a project to tackle. I'm thinking big, epic, the kind of poster board that makes other third graders jealous. Owen's face lit up. Really? Really? I brought glow-in-the-dark paint and silver glitter and these little LED lights that we might be able to work in if your dad's okay with me possibly destroying his dining room table. The table's already destroyed, Nathan said. There's a permanent marker stain from last year's geography project that no amount of scrubbing could remove. You're not going to make it worse. They moved into this dining room, which Nathan had hastily cleared that morning, shoving aside 3 days' worth of mail and a half-finished jigsaw puzzle Owen had abandoned. Victoria unpacked her supplies with the same methodical efficiency she brought to project meetings, organizing markers by color, laying out poster board options, setting bottles of glue in a precise row. Owen watched her work with fascination. You're really organized. Occupational hazard, Victoria replied. I manage a department of 47 engineers. If I'm not organized, chaos wins. Dad's not organized. He loses his keys every morning. Owen, it's true. You put them in different places and then can't remember where. Victoria laughed. I have a bowl by my front door. Keys go in the bowl, every single time. It's the only way I survive. See, Dad? You need a bowl. I'll get a bowl, Nathan said, shooting his son a look that promised they'd be discussing appropriate conversation topics later. Coffee, Victoria? Or I have tea or orange juice if you're... Coffee would be amazing, she said. Black, please. I haven't actually eaten today, so fair warning, I might get jittery around hour 2. Nathan escaped to the kitchen, grateful for the brief reprieve. Through the doorway, he could see Victoria and Owen bent over the poster board, his son explaining his vision while she listened with what appeared to be genuine interest. Not the forced attention adults sometimes gave children, but real engagement, asking follow-up questions about why he'd chosen certain constellations, whether he wanted to include mythology alongside the astronomy. The coffee maker gurgled. Nathan leaned against the counter, watching them. Owen was gesturing enthusiastically, using his hands to map out constellation patterns in the air. Victoria nodded, reached for a pencil, started sketching something on the poster board that made Owen bounce with excitement. "She's good with him," Nathan murmured to himself. "What was that?" Victoria called from the dining room. "Nothing. Coffee's almost ready." He returned with 2 mugs, one for Victoria, one for himself, and a juice box for Owen, who immediately got distracted trying to stab the straw through the foil hole. Victoria accepted the coffee with a grateful smile, took a long sip, and sighed. "That's the good stuff." "What is that, French roast?" "House blend from the grocery store," Nathan admitted. "Sarah always bought the fancy beans from that place downtown, but after I just got whatever was on sale." Victoria's expression softened. "Store brand tastes better when you're drinking it with good company anyway." They worked for 2 hours straight. Owen dominated the creative direction, insisting that Cassiopeia needed to be bigger because it was his favorite, that they should include Polaris with a special gold star, that the poster board's background should be dark blue, not black, because that's what the sky looked like right after sunset. Victoria followed his lead, offering suggestions but never overriding his choices. She showed him how to use a ruler to make straight lines for the constellation connections, demonstrated a technique for layering glitter so it didn't clump, praised his careful coloring inside the lines while admitting she'd always been terrible at staying in boundaries herself. Nathan mostly observed, cutting poster board when directed, fetching supplies, watching his son interact with someone who wasn't Mrs. Chen or a teacher or one of the other parents at school who still looked at Nathan with pity 3 years later. "Your mom would have loved this project," Nathan said during a break while Owen ran to the bathroom. "Sarah was artistic. She could have made this look museum quality." Victoria set down the marker she'd been holding. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever worry that talking about her around Owen will make it harder for him? Or do you worry that not talking about her will make him forget?" The question was so precisely what Nathan had been struggling with for 3 years that he actually laughed. "Both, constantly, simultaneously." "What do you do?" "I follow his lead. If he brings her up, we talk about her. If he doesn't, I don't force it. Some days he wants to tell stories about her. Other days, mentioning her name makes him shut down completely. There's no manual for this." "There should be," Victoria said quietly. "Parenting is hard enough without losing your co-pilot halfway through." Owen returned before Nathan could respond, carrying his constellation chart, a laminated poster he'd gotten from the observatory 3 years ago that was now creased and worn from constant use. He spread it across the table with reverence. "Okay, so here's the reference material. We need to make sure the star positions are accurate. Mrs. Rodriguez says scientific accuracy matters even in art projects." "Mrs. Rodriguez sounds smart," Victoria said. "Let's get it right." By 5 o'clock, the poster board was taking shape. Constellations sparkled against the dark blue background, connected by silver lines that caught the light. Owen had carefully labeled each one in his best handwriting, which was still quite terrible, but Victoria assured him that astronomers probably had bad handwriting too, given how much time they spent looking up instead of writing down. Nathan ordered pizza because cooking felt like admitting the afternoon had an endpoint. Victoria tried to decline, said she should probably get going, but Owen's disappointed face was enough to convince her to stay just a little longer. They ate in the living room, Owen wedged between Nathan and Victoria on the couch, telling Victoria about the observatory trips he used to take with his mother. Nathan tensed, waiting for the conversation to veer into painful territory, but Owen spoke matter-of-factly about Sarah, treating her memory like a fact rather than a wound. "Mommy knew all the stories," Owen explained around a mouthful of pepperoni. "Like, Cassiopeia was a queen who bragged too much about being beautiful, so she got punished by being put in the sky upside down for half the year. And Orion was a hunter who got killed by a scorpion, which is why they're on opposite sides of the sky and never appear together." "I didn't know that," Victoria said. "The scorpion detail, I mean." "Most people don't. Mommy said the sky is full of stories that people forgot to remember." Owen paused, then added, "She forgot to remember lots of stuff at the end. The medicine made her fuzzy." Nathan's throat tightened. "Buddy, you don't have to—" "It's okay, Dad. Victoria asked about the constellations. I'm just explaining." Owen turned to Victoria with complete seriousness. "She forgot my name sometimes, but she always remembered the stars. Even at the hospital, she'd make Dad open the curtains so she could see the sky." Victoria's hand found Nathan's knee under the pizza box, a brief squeeze that communicated more than words could. Nathan concentrated on breathing, on not falling apart in front of his 8-year-old who was handling his dead mother's memory with more grace than Nathan had managed in 3 years. "She sounds like she was an amazing person," Victoria said softly. "She was okay," Owen said with the brutal honesty of children. "She got mad sometimes, and she burned dinner a lot, but she gave the best hugs, the kind that made you feel like nothing bad could happen." "Those are the best kind," Victoria agreed. They finished the pizza in comfortable silence. Owen fell asleep against Victoria's shoulder halfway through a documentary about Mars that Nathan put on mostly to avoid navigating the emotional landmine of where the conversation had gone. Victoria didn't move, just sat there with Owen's weight against her, one hand absently smoothing his hair, while the narrator explained atmospheric composition. Nathan watched them, his son and his boss, this woman he barely knew, who'd somehow become part of his Sunday in a way that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Victoria's eyes were distant, focused on something beyond the television screen, and Nathan wondered what she was thinking. Whether she regretted coming, whether this was too much, too fast, too complicated. "I should get him to bed," Nathan whispered when the documentary ended. Victoria nodded. "I should go anyway. It's getting late." Nathan scooped up Owen, who mumbled something about nebulas without waking, and carried him upstairs. He went through the bedtime routine on autopilot, shoes off, jeans replaced with pajama pants, blanket pulled up to chin, glow-in-the-dark stars checked to ensure they were still glowing. Owen stirred as Nathan turned to leave. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy. I like her, Victoria. She's nice." "She is nice." "Is she going to come back?" Nathan hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe. I hope she does. She laughs at my jokes. Most grown-ups just pretend to think they're funny." Nathan smiled in the darkness. "Get some sleep. School tomorrow." "Dad?" Owen's voice was smaller now, uncertain. "Is it okay that I like her? Even though Mommy's gone?" The question broke something in Nathan's chest and put it back together simultaneously. He sat on the edge of Owen's bed, hand on his son's shoulder. "It's more than okay," Nathan said. "Mommy would want you to have people in your life who make you happy. That's how love works. It doesn't replace other love. It just adds to it. Like how the sky has room for all the stars." Exactly like that. Owen considered this with the gravity of someone working through complex equations. "Okay, good night, Dad." "Good night, Owen." When Nathan returned downstairs, Victoria was washing the pizza plates at the kitchen sink, despite his protests that she didn't need to clean. She dried her hands on a dish towel decorated with cartoon vegetables that Sarah had bought on impulse at a farmer's market 6 years ago. "He's a great kid," Victoria said. "You should be proud." "I'm terrified," Nathan admitted. "Every day. That I'm screwing it up. That he'll grow up and realize I had no idea what I was doing. That's just parenting, single or otherwise." Victoria folded the dish towel with precise corners. "My mother raised me alone after my father died. She was terrified, too. I found her journal years later, pages and pages of self-doubt, wondering if she was doing enough, being enough. But I turned out okay. Mostly. More than okay." Victoria's expression shifted into something Nathan couldn't quite read. "You don't actually know that. You know work, Victoria. Spreadsheets and quarterly reviews and project deadlines. That's not the same as knowing me. So let me know you." The words hung between them, heavier than Nathan had intended. Victoria set down the dish towel and turned to face him fully. "Nathan, I need to be honest about something." "Okay." "I didn't come here just to help with the science project."
Wait,
She took a breath. "I came because last night at that gala, talking to you, dancing with you, it was the first time in years I felt like a person instead of a position. And that scared me. It still scares me." "Why?" "Because people in positions don't get hurt. They don't fail at relationships or disappoint children or wake up at 3 in the morning wondering if they're fundamentally broken. Positions are safe. People are messy. Nathan moved closer, closing the distance between them. I'm terrified too. Of this. Of you being here in my house where Sarah used to be. Of Owen getting attached to someone who might leave. Of letting myself want something when I've spent 3 years convinced that wanting was greedy. Is it working? The not wanting? No. Nathan laughed, but it sounded hollow. It turns out feelings don't care about good intentions. Victoria reached for his hand, the same way she had on the dance floor 12 hours ago. What if we tried something radical? What's that? What if we stopped being so careful? Not reckless. I don't think either of us knows how to be reckless. But maybe we could try being honest instead of safe. Honest about what? About the fact that I drove around your block 3 times before parking because I was so nervous. About how I bought enough poster board for 6 projects because I was afraid one wouldn't be enough, and you'd think I was unprepared. About how sitting on your couch with your son asleep on my shoulder felt more like home than my penthouse apartment has in the entire year I've lived there. Nathan's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. You drove around the block? 3 times. Your neighbors probably think I'm casing the place. I changed my shirt 4 times. I noticed. The blue suits you. They stood there in Nathan's kitchen, hands joined, both of them trembling slightly with the weight of what they weren't quite saying. The overhead light hummed. The refrigerator kicked on with a mechanical groan. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. I don't know how to do this, Nathan said finally. Dating, relationships, any of it. Sarah was my high school sweetheart. I've never had to figure out how adults navigate this stuff. I'm not much better, Victoria admitted. My last relationship ended 4 years ago when my boyfriend proposed and I panicked so badly I threw up in the restaurant bathroom and then took a job in another city to avoid having the breakup conversation in person. That's deeply dysfunctional, I know. My therapist and I have worked through it extensively. I was going to say understandable. Commitment is terrifying. It is when you've watched your mother grieve your father for 26 years and counting. When you've seen what love costs when it ends badly. Victoria's grip on his hand tightened. But maybe it's more terrifying to keep avoiding it because we're scared of the price. What are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to have dinner with you. Real dinner, not pizza on a couch with your son as a buffer. Just us, in a restaurant, navigating the awkwardness of first date conversation like normal people who aren't boss and employee. You're still technically my boss. Actually, as of Friday afternoon, I'm not. Victoria pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Corporate restructuring. Your team's been moved under Marcus Webb. I'm focusing exclusively on R&D going forward. Nathan took the paper, an official memo announcing organizational changes, effective the previous week. His name appeared on a list under Webb's division. Victoria's signature was at the bottom, authorizing the transfer. You knew about this at the gala, Nathan said slowly. I signed off on it Thursday, announced it Friday. Which means when I asked you to dance last night, there was no boss-employee dynamic in play, just 2 people at a party. Why didn't you say something? Because I wanted to see if this, she gestured between them, was real without the complication of workplace hierarchy. I needed to know if you'd talk to me like a person when you didn't have to. Nathan processed this information, turning it over in his mind. You restructured an entire department to, what, see if we had chemistry? I restructured the department because it made operational sense. We'd been planning it for months. The timing was just, Victoria smiled slightly. Fortunately convenient. That's very calculated. That's very me, she corrected. I don't do anything without thinking through the logistics first. It's my greatest strength and my most significant flaw. Nathan set the memo on the counter. Dinner, just us. When? Friday. There's a bistro downtown that, I know it. Sarah and I went there for our anniversary every year. Nathan saw Victoria's face fall and quickly added, but I'd like to go with you. Make new memories. The food's good, and they have this chocolate torte that's probably illegal in several states. Victoria's expression relaxed. Chocolate torte sounds perfect. They walked to the front door together, neither quite ready to end the day, but both aware it needed to end. Victoria gathered her coat and bag, leaving behind the craft supplies for Owen to finish his project during the week. Thank you, Nathan said. For today, for being patient with Owen, for being honest with me. Thank you for letting me in, Victoria replied, literally and figuratively. She leaned in, and for a heart-stopping moment, Nathan thought she might kiss him. Instead, she pressed her lips to his cheek, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than a kiss would have been. Intentional, tender, full of promise. Friday, she said. 7 o'clock? I'll pick you up. I'm perfectly capable of… I know you are. But let me do this one old-fashioned thing. Please, Victoria smiled. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. She left, and Nathan watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing around the corner. The house felt different in her absence, not emptier exactly, but aware of the space she'd occupied. The dining room still smelled like glitter glue and poster paint. Owen's constellation chart lay on the coffee table. A coffee mug with Victoria's lipstick print sat in the kitchen sink. Nathan picked up the mug, started to wash it, then stopped. He left it there. Evidence that someone new had been in his space, had drunk coffee in his kitchen, had sat on his couch, and let his son fall asleep on her shoulder. He climbed the stairs to check on Owen one more time. His son had shifted in sleep, sprawled across the bed with the complete abandon of childhood. The glow-in-the-dark stars cast their faint green light across his face. The same stars Sarah had helped him put up 4 years ago during a marathon bedtime negotiation session. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake him. She's coming to dinner Friday, he whispered. Your new… well, I don't know what she is yet, but she's something, and I think Mommy would have liked her. She makes terrible jokes and organizes markers by color, and she listened when you talked about constellations like they were the most important thing in the world. Owen mumbled something that might have been agreement or might have been pure sleep nonsense. I'm scared, Nathan continued, the confession easier in the dark. Scared of wanting this, scared of you getting hurt if it doesn't work out. Scared that being happy again means forgetting her, even though I know that's not how it works. He smoothed his son's hair, the same sandy brown Sarah's had been. But maybe being scared means it matters. Maybe that's okay. He left Owen sleeping and returned to his own room. The bed waited, king-sized and ridiculous for one person, still pressed against the wall on Sarah's side from when she'd needed the support to sit up those final months. Nathan had never moved it back to center, never reclaimed the space. Tonight he pushed the bed away from the wall. It took effort. The frame was heavy, the carpet resistant, but he managed, centering it in the room properly for the first time in 3 years. The space behind where it had been was dusty, marked with the rectangular shadow of its former position. Nathan stood back, surveying his work. The room looked different, more balanced, less like a shrine and more like a bedroom where someone actually lived. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Made it home safely. Thank you for today. Owen's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have met you. Sweet dreams. V? Nathan typed his response carefully. Thank you for taking a chance on us. Friday can't come soon enough. Sleep well. N. He set the phone on the nightstand and lay down in the center of his bed for the first time since Sarah died. The mattress felt strange, the perspective unfamiliar, but it also felt like progress, like choosing to live in the present instead of haunting the past. Outside, the winter sky held all 43 constellations Owen could name, and thousands more that neither of them would ever learn. Stars that had burned for millennia, creating light that took years to reach Earth, making patterns humans had assigned meaning to because finding order in chaos was how people survived. Nathan closed his eyes and thought about Victoria's hand in his, about Owen's easy acceptance, about chocolate torte and first dates, and the terrifying possibility that maybe broken people could build something beautiful after all. He fell asleep in the center of his bed and dreamed of dancing under stars that never stopped shining, even when clouds blocked the view. Friday arrived with the kind of anxiety Nathan hadn't felt since high school prom. He stood in front of his closet at 6:15, having already showered, shaved, and changed shirts twice. The blue one Victoria had complimented lay on the bed, rejected for being too obvious. The gray one made him look washed out. The white one had a coffee stain he'd somehow missed until now. Dad, you're freaking out, Owen observed from the doorway, still in his school clothes, backpack abandoned in the hallway. I'm not freaking out. I'm selecting appropriate dinner attire. You've been in here for 20 minutes. Mrs. Chen says that's freaking out. Nathan turned to find his son watching him with the kind of knowing amusement that 8-year-olds shouldn't possess. When did you talk to Mrs. Chen? She came over after school. You forgot to tell her you had a date tonight, so she brought lasagna thinking we'd need dinner. Owen grinned. She's really excited. She said it's about time you rejoined the living. What does that mean? Nathan grabbed the blue shirt off the bed and pulled it on, fumbling with buttons. It means Mrs. Chen needs to learn about boundaries, and you need to finish your homework before she gets here to babysit. Already done. Math, spelling, and reading log. Want to check it? Since when do you finish homework without being reminded 7 times? Owen shrugged with elaborate casualness. Victoria said organization makes life easier, so I'm trying it. I even made a checklist. See? He produced a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket with items listed in careful handwriting. Homework, backpack, lunchbox, feed fish. The fish one has a star because I forget him a lot. Nathan's throat tightened. Victoria had been in their lives for exactly 5 days, and already Owen was making checklists, finishing homework early, reorganizing his approach to daily tasks. The changes were small, but they added up to something that looked suspiciously like hope. That's great, buddy. Really great. Nathan tucked in the shirt, checked his reflection, wondered if he looked like someone who deserved a second chance at happiness. How do I look? Owen tilted his head, assessing with the brutal honesty children specialized in. Your hair's weird on one side, and you missed a button, but otherwise okay. Nathan fixed the button and attempted to tame his hair with water that immediately evaporated, leaving him looking exactly the same as before. Good enough? Dad? Owen's voice went serious. Are you nervous because of Victoria or because of Mommy? The question cut straight through Nathan's carefully constructed composure. He sat on the edge of the bed, and Owen climbed up beside him without being asked. Both, I think, Nathan admitted. I'm nervous about Victoria because I haven't been on a date in 15 years, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm nervous about Mommy because... He paused, searching for words that would make sense to an 8-year-old. Because loving someone new feels like I'm leaving her behind, even though I know that's not how it works. Like when we moved my bed away from the window? Nathan blinked. What? Remember? After Mommy died, I wanted my bed by the window so I could see the stars. But then last year, I wanted to move it because the sun woke me up too early. And you said it was okay to change things even if Mommy helped pick where the bed went the first time. I remember. This is like that. You're just moving the bed. Mommy's still there. The bed's still there. Everything's just in a different spot. Owen leaned against Nathan's shoulder. Victoria's nice, and she makes you smile different. Not sad smile. Real smile. Nathan wrapped an arm around his son, marveling at the wisdom children possessed when adults stopped underestimating them. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always listen. Fair point, Mrs. Chen arrived at 6:30, carrying not just lasagna, but also homemade cookies and what appeared to be tactical surveillance questions disguised as friendly conversation. So this Victoria, she said, unpacking food while Owen set the table with exaggerated care. She's the boss lady from the company gala? Former boss, Nathan corrected. Organizational restructuring. We're in different departments now. Very convenient timing. That's what I said, Owen chimed in. Nobody asked you, Nathan said, then caught Mrs. Chen's look. Yes, fine, it's convenient, but it's also legitimate. The restructuring made operational sense. Mrs. Chen hummed non-committally, the sound conveying volumes of skepticism. And she came here Sunday, helped with the science project, stayed for dinner. Owen invited her to stay. Because Dad wanted her to, but was too scared to ask, Owen added helpfully. Traitor, Nathan muttered. Mrs. Chen smiled, the expression warm despite her interrogation tactics. I'm just making sure you know what you're doing. It's been 3 years, Nathan. You deserve happiness, but Owen deserves stability. If this woman is just... She's not just anything, Nathan interrupted, surprised by the vehemence in his own voice. I don't know what she is yet, but she's not casual, not to me. Good. Mrs. Chen patted his arm. Then go.
Be nervous. Spill wine on yourself. Say awkward things.
That's what first dates are for. Owen and I will be fine. We're watching that documentary about Jupiter's moons. There are 79 of them, Owen announced. Ganymede is the biggest. It's even bigger than Mercury. Nathan kissed the top of his son's head, grabbed his wallet and keys from the new bowl Victoria had inspired him to buy, and headed for the door. His hands shook slightly as he started the car. The drive to Victoria's apartment building took 12 minutes, during which Nathan rehearsed conversation topics, rejected most of them as boring or inappropriate, and settled on just trying to be honest. Victoria's building was one of those modern high-rises downtown, all glass and steel and probably outrageous monthly fees. The doorman called up to announce Nathan's arrival with the kind of professional courtesy that made Nathan acutely aware of his department store suit and 7-year-old sedan. She appeared in the lobby exactly at 7, and Nathan forgot how to breathe. Victoria had abandoned her work uniform entirely. The dress was simple, dark red, falling just below her knees, with a neckline that was elegant without being provocative. Her hair was down again, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She wore different perfume than at the gala, something warmer, less formal. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless. "Sorry, I changed outfits 4 times and still wasn't sure about this one. Too much?" "Perfect," Nathan managed. "You look perfect. You clean up pretty well yourself. Is that the blue shirt?" Owen said it made my eyes look nice. Owen's a smart kid. Victoria grabbed a coat from the doorman with a thank you that included the man's name, suggesting she actually paid attention to the people around her instead of just moving through the world in her own bubble. "Ready?" The Bistro was a 15-minute drive, during which they made awkward small talk about traffic and whether the city's new parking regulations made any sense. Nathan parked, came around to open Victoria's door before she could do it herself, and tried not to visibly panic when she took his offered arm. Inside, the restaurant was exactly as Nathan remembered: warm lighting, exposed brick walls, small tables with white tablecloths and single candles. He'd sat at a corner table with Sarah every anniversary for 9 years, watching her laugh over wine and pasta, planning futures they'd never get to have. "Nathan," Victoria's voice pulled him back. "You okay? We can go somewhere else if—" "No, I want to be here with you." He squeezed her hand. "New memories, remember?" They were seated at a different table, not the corner one, thank whatever deity governed small mercies. The waiter brought water, recited specials, left them with menus and a promise to return. Victoria studied her options with the same focus she probably applied to quarterly reports. "The salmon looks good," she said, "but so does the pasta and the steak. Why is making decisions so hard when there's no wrong answer?" "Because you're used to decisions that have consequences," Nathan offered. "Bad project management loses money. Bad salmon just means you order something else next time." Spoken like someone who's done this before. "Not in a long time. Sarah and I came here for anniversaries. She always got the mushroom risotto. I always got chicken marsala. We never deviated. Looking back, it seems boring." Victoria set down her menu. "Or it seems like you found something that worked and didn't feel the need to fix it. That's not boring. That's comfortable." "Is comfortable good or bad?" "Depends on whether you're talking about a marriage or a pair of shoes." She smiled. "In marriage, comfortable sounds pretty ideal. In footwear, it's essential. In restaurant choices, it's maybe worth branching out occasionally." Nathan laughed, some of his tension dissolving. "So you're saying I should get the salmon?" "I'm saying we should order 3 things and share everything. Life's too short for limited data points." They did exactly that: salmon, pasta, and yes, the steak, despite the waiter's barely concealed judgment at their indecision. Victoria ordered wine with the kind of casual knowledge that suggested she actually understood the difference between regions and vintages. Nathan nodded along, pretending he cared about tannins and oak aging, when really he was just watching the way candlelight caught in Victoria's eyes. "You're staring," she said once the waiter left. "Sorry, this is surreal. 4 days ago you were my boss, now we're sharing entrees and discussing wine." "Technically, I was your boss 6 days ago. The restructuring went through Friday morning." Victoria took a sip of water. "Does it bother you that I orchestrated the timing?" "Should it?" "Some people would say it's manipulative, that I moved pieces around to get what I wanted." Nathan considered this. Did you compromise the company's operational efficiency to make this happen? No, the restructuring made sense regardless. We'd been planning it since August. Did you harm anyone's career in the process? Actually, 3 people got promotions, including Marcus Webb, who's been angling for broader management responsibility. Then you didn't manipulate anything. You just recognized an opportunity and took it. Nathan reached across the table, finding her hand. That's what good leaders do. They see the whole board and make moves that solve multiple problems simultaneously. Victoria's fingers interlaced with his. My therapist would say I'm overcomplicating things because emotional vulnerability terrifies me. What do you say? I say she's probably right, but I'm paying her $200 an hour to tell me things I already know, so who's really winning that relationship? The food arrived, and they fell into an easy rhythm of sharing, tasting, offering commentary on each dish. The salmon was excellent. The pasta was good, but too salty. The steak was perfect, cooked precisely medium rare the way Nathan preferred, but never ordered because Sarah had been vegetarian, and he'd gotten used to accommodating her preferences. Tell me about the proposal, Victoria said during a lull. The one that made you throw up and flee to another city. Victoria groaned. We're really doing this? You brought up your therapist. Fair game. Fine. His name was Derek, investment banker, very successful, very traditional. We'd been dating for 2 years, and I knew he was going to propose because he's terrible at keeping secrets. And I found the ring receipt in his jacket pocket. Victoria pushed pasta around her plate. He took me to this incredibly expensive restaurant, got down on one knee, said all the right things, and I just panicked, like full body, can't breathe, world-ending panic. What scared you? The permanence, I think. The idea that I was supposed to want this, and I didn't. Or I did, but not with him. Or I did with him, but not enough to override the terror of becoming my mother, loving someone so completely that losing them destroyed everything. She looked up, meeting Nathan's eyes. I locked myself in the bathroom, threw up twice, crawled out the window, and took a cab home. Submitted my resignation Monday morning. Took a position with Morrison and Fletcher 3 weeks later. Did you ever talk to him, Derek? I sent a very long, very cowardly email. He responded with 2 words. I understand. Which somehow made it worse. Victoria drained half her wine. I've sabotaged every relationship I've had since my father died. Too scared to commit, too stubborn to quit trying. My therapist says it's a trauma response. I say it's a character flaw. Or it's just not finding the right person at the right time, Nathan suggested. You can't force compatibility. Is that what we are? Compatible? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Nathan thought about Victoria on his couch, with Owen asleep on her shoulder, about her organizing markers by color and listening to constellation facts like they mattered, about the way she'd asked, when's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, and changed something fundamental in how Nathan saw his own life. I think we might be, he said carefully, but I also think we're both terrified of what that means. Terrified is underselling it. I'm petrified. You have a son who's already lost one parent. If I screw this up, then we deal with it together, like adults. Nathan squeezed her hand. Owen asked me tonight if I was nervous about you or about Sarah, and the honest answer is both. I'm terrified of wanting this and having it fall apart, but I'm more terrified of not trying because I'm scared. That's very brave. That's very desperate. There's a difference. Victoria smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Can I tell you something terrible? Please. When I got home Sunday night, after helping with the poster board, I cried for an hour. Just sat in my apartment and sobbed like an idiot. Nathan's chest tightened. Why? Because it was the first time I'd felt part of something in years. Part of a family, part of a moment, part of something real that wasn't spreadsheets and quarterly projections. And I realized how much I'd been lying to myself about being fine alone. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. Sitting in your living room with pizza and a nature documentary and an 8-year-old who fell asleep mid-sentence, that felt more like home than anything I've built in my 34 years. Victoria, I'm not finished. I need to say this while I have courage. She took a shaky breath. I don't know if I'm good at this. Relationships, families, any of it. But I want to try. With you. With Owen. I want to try being part of something instead of just managing things from a distance. Nathan stood up, came around the table, and pulled Victoria to her feet. The other diners probably stared. The waiter definitely paused mid-service. Nathan didn't care. He wrapped his arms around Victoria and held her while she cried quietly into his shoulder, her expensive perfume mixing with the smell of salmon and wine and possibility. "We're both disasters," he murmured into her hair. "But maybe disasters work better in pairs." She laughed wetly against his shirt. "That's the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." "Give me time. I'll get worse." They sat back down to cold entrees and melted candles. The waiter tactfully pretended not to notice Victoria's mascara situation and offered dessert menus with the kind of professional discretion that probably earned excellent tips. They ordered the chocolate torte to share, because some traditions deserve to be honored even when everything else changed. "Owen asked me something Sunday night," Nathan said while they waited for dessert. "After you left. He asked if it was okay to like you even though his mother's gone." Victoria went very still. "What did you tell him?" "I told him love doesn't replace other love, it just adds to it, like the sky having room for all the stars." "That's beautiful." "I stole it from him, actually. He came up with the star metaphor." The torte arrived, dense and perfect, with 2 forks and a dollop of whipped cream that was probably 30% of Nathan's daily calorie allowance. They ate in comfortable silence, and Nathan marveled at how natural this felt. Sharing dessert with someone new, building memories in a place haunted by old ones, choosing to move forward instead of staying frozen. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said, setting down her fork. "Something important." Nathan's stomach dropped. "Okay." "The restructuring. Moving your team to Marcus's division? That happens all the time, corporate fluidity. But there's a condition that could complicate things." "What condition?" "I'm being considered for VP of Operations. Promotion gets announced next quarter if the board approves, which they probably will, because I've exceeded every metric they've thrown at me." Victoria met his eyes. "It means longer hours, more travel, higher profile within the company. And if this is something we're actually pursuing, people will notice. They'll talk." "Let them talk." "Nathan, I'm serious. Office politics can be vicious. If people think you're getting favorable treatment because we're involved, then I'll work twice as hard to prove I'm not." Nathan reached for her hand again, grounding himself in the physical connection. "I'm not going to hide this. Us. Whatever we're building. I spent 3 years hiding from life. I'm done with that." "You might regret that confidence when some mid-level manager starts spreading rumors." "I survived watching my wife die over 18 months. I think I can handle office gossip." The words came out harsher than Nathan intended, but he didn't take them back. "Victoria, either this matters or it doesn't. Either we're willing to navigate complications or we're not. But I'm not interested in half measures anymore. I want all of it, the mess, the complications, the terrifying possibility that maybe this works." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying their joined hands. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Okay," she said simply. "Okay? Okay, let's be disasters together. Let's navigate complications. Let's see if broken people can build something that doesn't break." She smiled, wobbly but genuine. "But I'm keeping my apartment, for at least 6 months, because I'm terrified and practical in equal measure." "I wouldn't expect anything less." They finished dessert, paid the check, splitting it despite Nathan's protests, and walked out into the December night. The temperature had dropped while they were inside, cold enough that Nathan offered his jacket without thinking. Victoria accepted it with a small smile that suggested she could handle the cold just fine, but appreciated the gesture anyway. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said as they walked to the car. "Anything. When Owen asked if your bed was big enough for 2, she paused, seeming to choose words carefully. "Was that just about logistics? Or was it about whether you have room in your life for someone new?" Nathan stopped walking, turning to face her under a streetlight that cast everything in amber. "Both, probably. Owen's got a gift for asking questions that sound simple but cut straight to the complicated parts." "And what's the answer? Do you have room?" Nathan thought about his bedroom, the king-size bed he'd finally centered after 3 years against the wall. About the closet where Sarah's clothes had hung until last winter, when Mrs. Chen had gently suggested maybe it was time. About the photos on the dresser that he'd stopped avoiding and started remembering fondly instead of painfully. "The bed's big enough," he said quietly. "As long as you're patient with the fact that some mornings I might wake up feeling guilty for being happy. That sometimes I'll say Sarah's name by accident, that Owen might have hard days where he needs me to just be his dad and nothing else. And you have to be patient with the fact that I'll probably overanalyze everything, retreat into work when emotions get overwhelming, and occasionally panic about commitment because my brain's wired to see permanence as dangerous. Victoria stepped closer. But I want to try. Despite all of it. Maybe because of all of it. Nathan kissed her then, right there under the streetlight with December cold biting at their faces, and his jacket draped over her shoulders. It was gentle and careful and tasted like chocolate and wine and the terrifying sweetness of second chances. Victoria made a small sound of surprise before kissing him back, her hands finding their way into his hair, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria laughed shakily. That was overdue, Nathan finished. I was going to say terrifying, but overdue works too. They drove back to Victoria's apartment in charged silence, hands clasped over the center console, the radio playing quiet jazz that neither of them paid attention to. Nathan walked her to the building entrance, where the doorman pretended not to notice them standing too close. I should go, Nathan said, not moving. Owen's probably convinced Mrs. Chen to let him stay up past bedtime watching documentaries. Probably. Victoria played with the collar of his jacket, still wearing it despite being steps from her lobby. When can I see you again? Tomorrow? Owen has a soccer game at 10. You could come, if you want. No pressure. I'd love to. Victoria kissed him again, quick and sweet. Thank you for tonight, for being honest, for not running when I cried into your salmon. You cried into my shoulder. The salmon was innocent. Semantics. She handed back his jacket, and Nathan immediately missed its absence, the way it had looked on her. Good night, Nathan. Good night, Victoria. He waited until she was inside before driving home, where he found Owen and Mrs. Chen exactly as predicted. On the couch, documentary paused, Owen fighting sleep with the determination of someone who knew bedtime was negotiable with the right babysitter. Dad! Owen scrambled up, suddenly awake. How was it? Did you kiss her? Did she like the restaurant? Are you getting married? Owen, breathe. Nathan scooped him up, despite the fact that 8-year-olds were really getting too big for this. It was good. Yes. Yes, and absolutely not yet. Mrs. Chen gathered her things with a knowing smile. Yet. I like that word. It implies possibility. It implies I'm not proposing to someone after one date. Sarah would approve, Mrs. Chen said firmly. That girl made you happy. This one makes you hopeful. That's different. That's important. After she left, Nathan carried Owen upstairs, both of them going through the bedtime routine on autopilot, teeth brushed, pajamas on, glow-in-the-dark stars checked for optimal brightness. She's coming to my game tomorrow, Owen said as Nathan tucked him in. She is. Is that okay? Yeah, I want her to see me play, even though I'm not very good. You're great at defense. Well, that's what bad players do, Dad. Everyone knows that. Nathan laughed. Fair point. But you try hard. That counts for something. Owen was quiet for a moment, picking at his blanket. Dad, is Victoria going to be my new mom? The question punched the air from Nathan's lungs. We haven't even talked about. It's really early to. I don't want a new mom, Owen interrupted. I have a mom. She's just not here anymore. But maybe Victoria could be something else. Like a bonus person. Someone who's ours, but different. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, struggling to process his 8-year-old's emotional intelligence. A bonus person. I like that. Do you love her? I barely know her, buddy. But do you think you could? Love her. Eventually. Nathan thought about Victoria crying in the restaurant, about her organizing markers and making checklists with Owen, about the way she'd admitted to being terrified and chosen to try anyway. Yeah, he said softly. I think I could. Is that okay with you? Owen considered this with the gravity of someone making important decisions. Only if she likes me too, not just dad and kid package deal, but actually likes me. As a person. She does. I promise. Okay then. Owen yawned, finally surrendering to sleep. Can she bring snacks to the game? Mrs. Chen never brings good snacks. I'll ask her about the snacks. Nathan kissed his son's forehead and stood to leave, But Owen's voice stopped him at the door. Dad, Mommy would like her. Victoria. She would have thought she was smart and nice and good for us. How do you know? Because Mommy always said you needed someone who could keep up with your brain. And Victoria's really smart. Plus she laughs at your terrible jokes. Mommy always said that was important. Nathan's vision blurred. She did say that, didn't she? Yeah, so I think it's okay to love her when you're ready. Nathan nodded, not trusting his voice, and pulled Owen's door to its usual crack of open. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, processing the conversation, marveling at how his son could articulate feelings Nathan was still struggling to name. In his own room, Nathan changed for bed and lay down in the center of his properly positioned mattress. His phone buzzed. Victoria, right on time, made it to bed. Can't stop thinking about tonight. About you. About everything. Is it too soon to say I'm already counting down to tomorrow? Nathan smiled in the darkness. Not too soon. I've been counting since I dropped you off. Sleep well, dream of soccer games and questionable snacks. N. Looking forward to both. Good night, Nathan. V. He set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, at the faint glow from Owen's room across the hall, where 43 constellations worth of plastic stars created their own small universe. Outside, the real stars burned in patterns humans had named thousands of years ago, connecting dots across impossible distances, making meaning from chaos. Nathan closed his eyes and let himself imagine a future where Victoria came to soccer games and helped with homework, and slowly, carefully, became part of the fabric of their lives. Where broken people built something stronger from their fractures. Where love didn't divide but multiplied, expanding to fill whatever space opened up to receive it. His bed was big enough. His heart was big enough. The question had never been about space. It had been about courage, about choosing to try despite the terror, about believing that happiness wasn't a betrayal of grief, but a transformation of it. Nathan fell asleep thinking about Victoria's laugh, about Owen's acceptance, about second chances and new beginnings, and the radical possibility that maybe, just maybe, they were all going to be okay. Victoria showed up to Owen's soccer game wearing jeans and a Morrison and Fletcher Company hoodie that Nathan had never seen her wear to the office, carrying a bag of orange slices and granola bars that made Owen light up like she'd brought championship trophies. You brought snacks! Owen grabbed the bag, inspecting contents with the seriousness of a health inspector. Good snacks, too, not the gross protein bars Mrs. Chen always gets. Owen, manners, Nathan warned, but Victoria laughed. I texted Mrs. Chen for recommendations. She said protein bars were a mistake she wouldn't repeat. They sat on cold metal bleachers alongside other parents who gave Victoria curious looks that Nathan pretended not to notice. Owen's team was terrible, 12 8-year-olds who spent more time arguing about positions than actually playing, but Victoria cheered like she was watching the World Cup, jumping to her feet when Owen managed to kick the ball in roughly the right direction. That's it, Owen! Good hustle, she shouted, cupping her hands around her mouth. The mom next to them leaned over. Is that your son? He's mine, Nathan said quickly. Oh. The woman's eyes flicked between Nathan and Victoria, doing math that probably didn't add up to anything appropriate. I just thought, you look very invested. Victoria smiled with knife-edge politeness. I'm invested. He's a great kid. The conversation died there, but Nathan felt eyes on them for the rest of the game, other parents whispering, glances that lingered too long. By halftime, he was acutely aware that bringing Victoria to a children's soccer game had been the social equivalent of announcing their relationship through a megaphone. People are staring, Victoria murmured during a water break. Let them. Nathan, you're here because Owen wanted you here, because I wanted you here. What people think about it isn't our problem. Victoria's hand found his on the bleacher between them, fingers interlacing. The gesture was small but deliberate, and Nathan heard the whispers increase in volume. He squeezed her hand tighter. Owen's team lost spectacularly, 7-2, but Owen managed an assist that he talked about the entire drive home. Victoria had driven separately but followed them back, and the three of them ended up in Nathan's kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup because Owen declared it was perfect post-game food. Can Victoria stay for dinner? Owen asked, already setting 3 places at the table. Nathan looked at Victoria, giving her an out. She'd already given up her Saturday morning to watch terrible youth soccer, but she nodded without hesitation. I'd love to. As long as someone teaches me the proper grilled cheese technique. I usually burn mine. You have to use medium heat, Owen explained with the authority of a cooking show host. High heat burns the bread before the cheese melts. It's science. They fell into an easy rhythm. Nathan at the stove, Victoria cutting sandwiches into triangles because Owen insisted they tasted better that way. Owen narrating a play-by-play of every moment of the game like he'd just competed in the Olympics. It felt startlingly domestic, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. After lunch, Owen dragged Victoria to the backyard to show her his research station, a folding table covered in notebooks where he logged weather patterns and bird sightings with the dedication of a junior scientist. Nathan watched from the kitchen window, doing dishes and eavesdropping shamelessly. See, this is the migration chart, Owen was saying, pointing to a graph that was more enthusiasm than accuracy. Robins come back in March. Goldfinches stay all winter if you have the right seeds. This is incredible, Victoria said, and Nathan could tell she meant it. Do you want to be an ornithologist? What's that? Someone who studies birds professionally. Owen's eyes went wide. That's a job? Like people pay you to watch birds? They do. Usually requires a lot of school, though. College, graduate work, probably some field work in places with interesting bird populations. Like where? Rainforests, the Galapagos Islands, Alaska during migration season, anywhere birds do interesting things. Owen was quiet for a moment, processing. Mommy always said I could be anything I wanted, but she died before I figured out what that was. Victoria crouched beside him, eye level. You're 8. You have years to figure it out, and I bet your mom would be proud of you for asking questions and being curious. That's how all good scientists start. Did your dad get to see you become successful? The question was innocent, but Nathan saw Victoria flinch. She recovered quickly, though, her voice steady when she answered. No. He died when I was 12, but I think about him sometimes when I'm working on hard problems. Wonder if he'd be proud. Wonder what advice he'd give.
Do you think he would be proud? I hope so. I work really hard, sometimes too hard, according to my therapist, but I think he'd understand that. He worked hard, too. Owen considered this with his characteristic seriousness. I think Mommy would be proud of Dad. For not being sad all the time anymore. For smiling real smiles instead of sad smiles. Victoria's eyes found Nathan's through the kitchen window. I think she would be too. They spent the afternoon in the backyard despite the December cold, Owen showing Victoria his collection of interesting rocks and explaining his theories about why some clouds looked like animals. Nathan brought out hot chocolate, and they sat on the back steps watching Owen chase a squirrel with the determination of someone who'd forgotten squirrels were faster than 8-year-olds. He's amazing, Victoria said quietly. Curious and kind and so much smarter than he probably realizes. He gets that from Sarah. The curiosity, the kindness. Nathan wrapped his hands around his mug. I worry sometimes that he doesn't remember enough about her. He was so young when she died. 5 is too young to build lasting memories. But he has you to help him remember, to tell stories, to keep her present without making her a ghost. Is that what I'm doing? Keeping her present? Victoria turned to look at him. You're honoring her. There's a difference. A ghost haunts. A memory accompanies. You're letting Owen remember his mother while still moving forward. That's not easy. Nathan wanted to kiss her right there on his back steps with Owen 20 feet away chasing wildlife, but he settled for taking her hand again, the gesture becoming familiar. What are we doing? He asked. Really, this whole, whatever this is? I think we're building something, Victoria said. Slowly, carefully, without a clear blueprint but with good intentions. That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying, but it's also kind of wonderful. Owen returned, breathless and unsuccessful in his squirrel pursuit. Can Victoria come to dinner tomorrow too? We could make spaghetti. I'm really good at stirring sauce. Nathan looked at Victoria, letting her make the call. She smiled. I'd love to, but only if I can bring dessert. What's your stance on chocolate chip cookies? Strongly pro-cookie, Owen declared, especially if they're homemade. Store-bought is fine, but homemade is better. Homemade it is. Victoria left as the sun was setting, and Nathan walked her to her car, while Owen went inside to start homework that Nathan knew wouldn't actually get started for another hour.
Thank you, Nathan said. For today, for the soccer game, for the bird charts, for all of it. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Victoria leaned against her car. I meant what I said. Owen's incredible, and watching you with him, you're a better father than you give yourself credit for. I'm making it up as I go. That's all any parent does. The difference is you're doing it alone, and you're still getting it right more often than not. Nathan kissed her then, soft and unhurried, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise instead of just a moment. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling. I should go. I have approximately 7 hours of work I've been ignoring to spend time with you and your bird-obsessed son. Work on Sunday? VP candidates don't take weekends off. It's basically in the job description. Nathan sobered. Victoria, about the promotion, don't. I know what you're going to say, that we need to be careful, that people will talk, that this could complicate things. She touched his face. I don't care. Let them talk. Let it be complicated. I'm tired of making decisions based on what's easy instead of what's right. What if it gets ugly? Office politics can be brutal. Then we deal with it together. You said you wanted all of it, the mess, the complications. I'm holding you to that. Nathan watched her drive away, then returned inside to find Owen exactly where he'd predicted. On the couch, homework unopened, watching a documentary about migratory patterns. You really like her, don't you? Owen said without looking away from the screen. I really do. Good. Me too. She's smart. And she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid just because I'm a kid. You are smart, buddy. Don't let anyone tell you different. Owen finally looked at him, expression serious. Is she going to live here? The question caught Nathan off guard. We haven't talked about that. Why? Because she's here a lot, and you smile different when she's around. And Chen says people who are serious about each other eventually live together. Owen paused. I think it would be okay if she lived here, as long as I still get my own room. Your room is safe, I promise. And she'd have to be okay with documentaries, because I watch a lot of documentaries. Nathan laughed. I'll make sure that's in the contract. They fell into their evening routine. Homework finally started and grudgingly completed. Dinner cobbled together from leftovers, the slow wind down toward bedtime that Nathan had perfected over 3 years of single parenting. But tonight felt different, lighter, like the house had remembered how to hold more than just grief. His phone buzzed around 9. Victoria. Home safely. Already missing you both? Is it weird that I'm jealous of people who get to see you every day? Nathan smiled. Not weird. I spent 6 months in meetings with you wishing I could see the version who laughs at terrible jokes and makes bird charts with 8-year-olds. N, that version is fairly new. You're one of about 3 people who gets to see her. I'm honored. N, you should be. She's selective. Goodnight, Nathan. Dream of soccer victories and perfect grilled cheese. Goodnight, Victoria. Dream of VP promotions and chocolate chip cookies. N, the weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Victoria came to dinner twice a week, staying later each time. The conversation stretching past Owen's bedtime into hours where Nathan learned about her childhood in Boston, her complicated relationship with her mother who'd never remarried, her secret love of terrible reality TV that she watched alone in her apartment because admitting to it felt unprofessional. They went on 3 more dates, a movie they both fell asleep during, an art museum where Owen joined them and provided running commentary on which paintings looked scientifically accurate, and a bookstore coffee shop where they spent 2 hours talking about nothing and everything while the barista gave them increasingly pointed looks about closing time. Victoria's promotion was announced in January. She became the youngest VP in Morrison and Fletcher history, and the office gossip went from speculation to confirmation overnight. People knew about Nathan, about Owen, about the fact that their newly promoted VP was dating a mid-level engineer from the company. The whispers started small. Comments about favorable treatment, questions about whether Nathan's last project assignment had been influenced by personal connections, pointed observations about how convenient the timing of the restructuring had been. Nathan ignored it, until he couldn't. It was Marcus Webb who brought it to him directly, closing Nathan's office door with the kind of careful courtesy that signaled an uncomfortable conversation ahead. We need to talk about Victoria Hale. Nathan set down his coffee. What about her? People are talking about you two, about whether there's favoritism happening. There's no favoritism. I haven't worked under her supervision since November. I know that. You know that. But perception matters, Nathan. And right now, people perceive that you're getting advantages because you're sleeping with a VP. The crudeness of it made Nathan's jaw clench. I'm not sleeping with anyone. We're dating. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're in a relationship with someone who has significant influence over your career trajectory, even if she's not your direct supervisor. What do you want me to do, Marcus? Break up with her to satisfy office gossip? Marcus sighed. I want you to be aware that this could impact you. Could impact her. HR is watching. If even a hint of impropriety emerges, then they'll find nothing, because there is nothing. Nathan stood. I'm doing my job. Meeting deadlines, exceeding expectations. If that's not enough because I'm dating someone who happens to work at the same company, then maybe the problem isn't me. He left before Marcus could respond, anger simmering just below the surface. That night, he told Victoria everything over dinner at her apartment while Owen was at a sleepover. She listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Maybe Marcus is right, she said finally. What? Maybe we should cool things off, for appearances. Nathan stared at her. You can't be serious. I'm being practical. My promotion is still probationary for the first quarter, if HR thinks I'm involved in favoritism. You're not involved in anything except dating someone who happens to work at the same company. That's not illegal. It's not even against policy. But it looks bad, Nathan. So what? We hide? Pretend we're not together so people stop whispering? Victoria stood, pacing her pristine living room. You don't understand what it's like. Being the youngest VP, being a woman in a male-dominated field. Every decision I make gets scrutinized. Every relationship gets questioned. If people think I'm compromising my judgment for personal reasons, are you? Nathan interrupted. Compromising your judgment? No, but perception? Screw perception. Either we matter or we don't. Either this is real or it's convenient. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Nathan's voice rose despite himself. It's not fair that I'm being questioned because I'm dating someone successful. It's not fair that you're being scrutinized because you're a woman who dared to have a personal life. It's not fair that Owen is starting to think of you as part of our family, and now you're talking about cooling things off. Victoria stopped pacing. Owen said that he thinks of me as family? He asked if you were going to live with us. Asked if your bed was big enough for 2 people because his is only good for 1. The fight went out of Victoria suddenly. She sat down on the couch, head in her hands. I don't know how to do this. Balance everything. Be good at my job and good at this relationship and good for Owen without failing at all 3 simultaneously. Nathan sat beside her. You're not failing at anything. You're just scared. We both are. What if we ruin each other's careers? What if this doesn't work out and we've sacrificed everything for nothing? What if it does work out and we've gained everything? Victoria looked at him, eyes red. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. Do we want this enough to fight for it? Yes or no? Yes, but no buts. Yes or no? Yes, she said quietly. Yes, I want this, want you. Want to be part of Owen's life and your life and build something that maybe looks like a family eventually. Then we fight for it together. We don't hide. We don't apologize. We do our jobs well. We're transparent with HR, and we refuse to let other people's opinions dictate our lives. Victoria leaned against him, and Nathan wrapped his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, the city lights twinkling through her floor-to-ceiling windows, both of them processing the reality that choosing each other meant choosing to be vulnerable in ways neither had anticipated. I'm terrified, Victoria whispered. Me too. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. They made love that night for the first time, slow and careful, and waited with the knowledge that they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Afterward, lying in Victoria's massive bed that was somehow still too small for 2 people who'd spent years sleeping alone, Nathan traced patterns on her shoulder. Owen asked if your bed was big enough, he said into the darkness. What did you tell him? I said I didn't know yet, but that we'd figure it out together. Victoria turned to face him. Is it big enough? Nathan thought about his own bed, centered in his room after 3 years against the wall, about the space he'd made for someone new, without erasing the memory of who'd been there before, about Owen's easy acceptance and Mrs. Chen's knowing smiles, and the terrifying, wonderful possibility that broken people could build something beautiful. "It's big enough," he said, "as long as you're the one beside me." Victoria kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Then I guess we're doing this, really doing this. Office gossip and all?" Office gossip and all. They fell asleep tangled together, and Nathan dreamed of a future where complications became manageable, where love expanded instead of divided, where 3 broken people became one whole family. In the morning, Victoria made terrible coffee and burnt toast, and Nathan had never tasted anything better. They talked about logistics, when to tell Owen that things were getting serious, how to handle the HR disclosure forms, whether Victoria would keep her apartment, or if that was just another safety net she was clinging to out of fear. "Move in with us," Nathan said suddenly, the words surprising them both. Victoria nearly dropped her coffee mug. "What?" "Move in. Not today. Not next week. But soon. When you're ready, because I'm tired of sleeping in separate places. Tired of scheduling time together like business meetings. I want to wake up next to you every morning. Want Owen to have you at breakfast, not just weekend dinners." "Nathan, we've been dating for 2 months. I know, it's fast, it's probably stupid, but I've spent 3 years being careful, and all it got me was lonely. I don't want careful anymore. I want you." Victoria set down her mug with shaking hands. "What about Owen? What if he's not ready?" "He asked if you were moving in before I even considered it. He's ready. The question is whether you are." "I'm terrified." "That's not a no." Victoria laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. "It's not a no. It's a let me think about it while I panic internally and consult my therapist. I'll take it." They spent the rest of the weekend together, and Monday morning arrived with the gentle violence of reality reasserting itself. Nathan returned to work to find his desk covered in projects that had piled up, and the whispers hadn't diminished. If anything, they'd gotten louder now that Victoria's promotion was official. But something had shifted in Nathan. He did his work with focus and precision, met every deadline, exceeded every expectation. And when colleagues made pointed comments about his relationship, he smiled and changed the subject without apology. Victoria was doing the same, he learned from their nightly phone calls. Being brilliant and strategic and proving that her promotion had nothing to do with favoritism and everything to do with competence. She worked impossible hours, took on challenging projects, and made decisions that impressed even her harshest critics. 3 weeks after their conversation about moving in, Victoria showed up at Nathan's house on a Thursday night with 2 suitcases and a bottle of wine. "I gave notice on my apartment," she said when Nathan answered the door, looking stunned. "Lease ends in 60 days. If the offer still stands, I'd like to take you up on it." Owen appeared behind Nathan, eyes going wide. "You're moving in? Really? If that's okay with you?" Victoria said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I know it's your house, and having someone new here might feel weird." Owen launched himself at her, wrapping his arms around her waist in a hug that nearly knocked her over. "It's okay. Better than okay. Can you teach me to make your cookies? The good ones from last week?" Victoria hugged him back, tears streaming down her face. "I can teach you to make cookies and bird charts, and anything else you want to learn." Nathan stood in the doorway watching his son and the woman he was falling in love with embrace, and felt something in his chest unlock. This was what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting, not replacing, but expanding. Making room for new love without erasing old love. Building a family from broken pieces. That night, they had a family meeting at the kitchen table. Nathan, Victoria, and Owen, discussing logistics and boundaries and what this new arrangement would look like. Owen had questions about bathroom schedules and whether Victoria would make him eat vegetables he hated. Victoria had questions about Owen's routines and whether she was allowed to help with discipline or if that was Nathan's domain exclusively. They talked for 2 hours, negotiating the terms of their new life together with the seriousness the moment deserved. And when they were done, Owen looked between them with satisfaction. "Okay," he said. "But we need a dog." "What?" Nathan and Victoria said simultaneously. "If we're going to be a real family, we need a dog. Every family has a dog. It's science."
That's not science, Nathan argued. It's family science. I just invented it. Victoria was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. What kind of dog? A big one that can sleep on my bed and go on hikes and maybe learn tricks, like a golden retriever or a lab, or one of those rescue mutts that nobody wants because they're too friendly. Nathan looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Nathan.
They both looked at Owen, who was grinning with the confidence of someone who knew he'd already won. "We'll think about it," Nathan said. "That means yes," Owen told Victoria. "When adults say we'll think about it, they mean yes, but they want you to think they're still in charge." "I'm learning so much about parenting," Victoria said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. They adopted a golden retriever 2 weeks later from a shelter, a 3-year-old named Rocket, who'd been returned twice for being too energetic. Owen was in love immediately. Victoria took to dog ownership with the same organizational precision she applied to everything, creating feeding schedules and training plans and a spreadsheet tracking vet appointments. Nathan watched his family expand from 2 to 3 to 4, from grief to healing, from surviving to living, and marveled at how quickly life could change when you stopped being afraid of change. Victoria moved in on a Saturday in March, her practical possessions fitting easily into the spaces Nathan had cleared. But she also brought softness, throw pillows and plants, artwork for the walls, a record player that reminded Nathan of the one Sarah used to have. They blended their lives carefully, honoring what had been while building what could be. Some mornings, Nathan still woke up feeling guilty for being happy. Some nights, Owen cried for his mother and wanted only his father. But Victoria never tried to replace Sarah. She carved out her own space, became her own kind of important, loved them both without demanding they love her back in equal measure. And slowly, inevitably, they became a family. The first real fight happened 6 months after Victoria moved in. On a Tuesday evening, when Nathan came home to find her laptop open on the kitchen table, spreadsheets glowing against the dim light, and Owen sitting on the couch with Rocket, looking miserable. "What's wrong?" Nathan asked, setting down his briefcase. Victoria said, "I can't go to space camp," Owen mumbled into Rocket's fur. Nathan's head snapped toward Victoria, who was stirring something on the stove with more force than necessary. "You said what?" "I said we need to discuss it as a family before making decisions," Victoria corrected without turning around. "There's a difference. Space camp's in July. The application deadline is Friday. We don't have time for committee meetings." Then maybe Owen should have mentioned it more than 3 days before the deadline. Victoria finally turned, her expression tight. "He's known about this for weeks. He told me today, expecting me to just write a check for $1,500 without consulting you. It's space camp. He's obsessed with astronomy. Of course he should go." "I'm not saying he shouldn't go. I'm saying we should discuss major expenses instead of making unilateral decisions." Nathan felt his temper rising. "Since when do I need your permission to spend money on my son?" The words came out harsher than intended, and Victoria flinched like he'd slapped her. Owen made a small sound from the couch. Rocket whined, sensing tension. "I'm not asking for permission," Victoria said quietly, too quietly. "I'm asking to be included in family decisions, but clearly, I'm still just the person who pays rent and walks the dog." "That's not fair. Neither is treating me like I'm overstepping when I try to parent. Either I'm part of this family or I'm not, Nathan. You can't have it both ways." Nathan opened his mouth to argue, then caught sight of Owen's face, pale and stricken, looking between them like he was watching his parents fight. Except Victoria wasn't Owen's parent. Not legally. Not even really, despite 6 months of bedtimes and homework help and cookies after soccer practice. "Can we discuss this privately?" Nathan said through gritted teeth. They retreated to the bedroom, closing the door on Owen's worried expression. The moment they were alone, Victoria's composure cracked. "I can't do this," she said, voice breaking. "I can't be in this family, but not really in it. Can't make decisions about Owen, but also can't question your decisions. Can't discipline him when he's disrespectful, but also can't let him walk all over me. He's 8. He forgot to mention space camp. That's not disrespect." "He didn't forget. He strategically waited until the last minute so you couldn't say no." Victoria sat on the edge of the bed they'd been sharing for months, head in her hands. And I'm not the bad guy for pointing that out. Nathan sat beside her, anger deflating into exhaustion. You're right. I'm sorry. This is hard. Figuring out where you fit, what authority you have. Do I have any authority, or am I just the woman who shares your bed and pays half the mortgage? You're more than that. Then act like it. Victoria looked at him, eyes red. I love Owen. I love you. I love this weird little family we've built, but I can't keep feeling like a guest in my own home. Nathan took her hands. What do you need? I need you to stop undermining me when I try to parent. I need Owen to understand that I'm not trying to replace his mother, but I am allowed to have expectations, and I need us to make decisions together instead of you deciding and me accommodating. Okay, you're right. All of it. Nathan squeezed her hands. About space camp, what do you think we should do? Victoria took a shaky breath. I think we should tell Owen that springing last-minute expensive requests isn't okay, but that we'll make an exception this time because it's important to him. And then we should sit down as a family and create a system for handling these things in the future. That sounds reasonable. It sounds like parenting, which is what I'm trying to do even though I have no idea what I'm doing. They returned to the living room to find Owen exactly where they'd left him, Rocket's head on his lap, both of them looking guilty. We're sending you to space camp, Nathan said, and Owen's face lit up before Nathan continued. But we're also having a family meeting about communication and decision-making, because springing things on us at the last minute isn't fair to anyone. I'm sorry, Owen said quietly. I just thought if I asked early, you'd have more time to say no. Victoria sat on the coffee table across from him. Owen, I'm never going to say no to things just because I can. I'm not here to be the mean parent who ruins your fun, but I am here to help you learn that families make big decisions together. That means giving us time to discuss things. Understand? Owen nodded. Are you mad at me? No, but I'm frustrated that you tried to manipulate the situation instead of trusting that we'd say yes if it was important. Dad always says yes to stuff about space. And now you have two parents who both need to agree, Victoria said gently. That's how families work when there's more than one adult. We make decisions together. Owen processed this, then asked the question that had probably been building for months. Are you my parent? Like, for real? Or just Dad's girlfriend who lives here? The question hung in the air, weighted with implications. Nathan started to answer, but Victoria spoke first. I'm whatever you need me to be, she said. I'm not trying to replace your mom. Nobody could do that. But I'm trying to be someone you can count on. Someone who shows up and cares and wants the best for you. If that makes me a parent, then yes. If it makes me something else, that's okay too. Owen thought about this with his characteristic seriousness. Can you be a bonus parent, like we talked about before? I'd be honored to be your bonus parent. Okay, then I'm sorry for trying to trick you about space camp. It won't happen again. Apology accepted. They ordered pizza and spent the evening filling out the space camp application together. The three of them crowded around the kitchen table while Rocket begged for crust. It felt like progress, like they'd crossed some invisible threshold from people living together to an actual family. That night, lying in bed, Victoria curled against Nathan's side. I meant what I said, she whispered, about not knowing what I'm doing, about being terrified I'm going to screw this up. You're doing fine, better than fine. I yelled at your son about money and made him cry. You set a boundary. That's different. Nathan kissed her forehead. And for what it's worth, you were right. About all of it. I do need to stop undermining you. You're not a guest here. You're family. Then maybe we should make it official. Nathan's heart stopped. What? Victoria sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. I'm not proposing. Don't panic. But I've been thinking, Owen's right to ask where I fit. Because legally, I'm nobody. If something happened to you, I'd have no rights. Couldn't make medical decisions for Owen. Couldn't stay in this house. I'd just be the woman who lived here for a while. Nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. Sarah probably thought the same thing. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not asking for a ring, not yet. But I'm asking if you've thought about the future. About what we're building and whether it's permanent. Nathan had thought about it. Late at night when Victoria was asleep beside him. During Owen's soccer games when she cheered louder than anyone else. Every time she made coffee in the morning or helped with homework or did the 1,000 small things that transformed a house into a home. I want to marry you, he said, the words surprising them both. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. When we're ready, when Owen's ready. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? You're it for me, Victoria. The person I want beside me for every disaster and triumph and boring Tuesday for the rest of my life. She kissed him then, desperate and relieved, and Nathan tasted salt from tears he couldn't tell were his or hers. They made love quietly, conscious of Owen asleep down the hall. And afterward, Victoria fell asleep with her head on Nathan's chest, one hand over his heart. Nathan lay awake, processing what he'd said, and found he meant every word. He wanted this. Wanted Victoria. Wanted the family they were building. Wanted a future that looked nothing like what he'd planned, but everything like what he needed. The months that followed were a careful dance of integration. Victoria's name was added to Owen's emergency contact list at school. She attended parent-teacher conferences, helped organize the 4th grade science fair, became a fixture at soccer games alongside Nathan. The whispers at Morrison and Fletcher had mostly died down, replaced by grudging respect as Victoria continued to excel in her role and Nathan proved his competence had nothing to do with favoritism. Summer arrived with oppressive heat and Owen's departure for space camp, the first time Nathan had been separated from his son for more than a night since Sarah's death. He stood in the driveway watching the camp bus pull away, Victoria's hand in his, both of them waving until Owen was out of sight. "He'll be fine," Victoria said as they walked back inside to a house that felt too quiet without an 8-year-old and his energetic dog. "I know. I'm just panicking about whether he packed enough sunscreen and remembering to call if he's homesick and wondering if he'll make friends." "How did you—" "Because I'm panicking about the same things." Victoria smiled. "Welcome to parenting. The anxiety never stops." They spent the week catching up on projects they'd neglected, repainting Owen's room, fixing the broken fence in the backyard, organizing the garage that had become a dumping ground for things neither of them wanted to deal with. They also spent hours talking, planning, discussing the future in ways they'd been too busy to explore. On the 4th night of Owen's absence, Nathan was grilling dinner when Victoria appeared on the back deck with a glass of wine and an expression he couldn't quite read. "Can we talk about something serious?" she asked. Nathan's stomach dropped. "That's never a good opening." "It's not bad, just serious." She sat on the deck stairs and Nathan joined her, abandoning the grill. "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to marry me eventually, and I want that too. But there's something we need to discuss first." "Okay." "I don't want kids," Victoria said quietly. "Biological kids, I mean. I've never wanted them. And I know that's not fair to you because you might want to have more children, expand the family, but I can't, won't. It's not something I'm willing to compromise on." Nathan absorbed this, turning it over in his mind. He'd never seriously considered more children. Owen had been enough. And after Sarah died, the idea of starting over with diapers and sleepless nights had felt impossible. But he also recognized that Victoria was offering him an out, a chance to reconsider before they went further. "I have a child," Nathan said finally. "Owen's enough, more than enough. If you're worried I'm going to resent you for not wanting to have babies, don't. That's not what this is about." "Are you sure? Because I know some people think families aren't complete without—" "Our family is complete. You, me, Owen, and a hyperactive golden retriever who thinks the mailman is a mortal enemy. That's enough." Victoria's eyes were bright with tears. "I was so scared you'd want more, that I'd have to choose between you and my certainty about not wanting biological children. You never have to choose. I chose you, all of you, including the parts that don't fit traditional expectations." She kissed him then, soft and grateful, and Nathan felt the last piece of their future click into place. This was what commitment looked like, accepting each other's boundaries, building a life that honored both their needs, choosing each other despite and because of their complications. Owen returned from space camp sunburned and full of stories about rocket launches and telescope observations, and a girl named Maya who knew more constellations than he did. He talked for 3 hours straight, barely pausing for breath, while Rocket celebrated his return by knocking over a lamp in his excitement. "I learned about Mars colonization," Owen announced over dinner, "and asteroid mining, and how to calculate orbital trajectories. Can we get a telescope? A real one, not the cheap one we have?" "We'll add it to the list," Nathan said, exchanging glances with Victoria. The same list as "we'll think about it"? Owen asked suspiciously. A different list. The reasonable requests we're actually considering list. Is that a real list or a pretend list? It's getting more pretend by the second, Victoria said, but she was smiling. As summer faded into fall, Nathan found himself thinking more seriously about marriage, about making permanent what already felt permanent, about giving Victoria legal standing in Owen's life, making official what everyone already understood. The idea crystallized one October evening when Owen came home from school with a family tree assignment. He'd drawn the tree in careful detail, branches spreading across poster board, and Nathan's heart clenched when he saw where Victoria's name had been placed, not off to the side as Dad's girlfriend, but right there in the parent section, equal to Nathan, connected to Owen by lines that represented something more than biology. "Is this okay?" Owen asked nervously. Mrs. Patterson said family trees can include anyone who's family, not just blood relatives, and Victoria feels like family. "It's perfect," Nathan managed, throat tight. That night, after Owen was asleep, Nathan showed Victoria the family tree. She stared at it for a long moment, fingers tracing her name where Owen had written it in blue marker. "He put me there," she whispered, "in the parent section. Because that's where you belong." Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Nathan." He kissed her before she could finish, pouring everything he felt into it, love and gratitude and the certainty that this woman, this moment, this family was what he'd been stumbling toward since the night at the gala when she'd asked him to dance. The proposal happened in the backyard on a Sunday afternoon in November, nothing like the elaborate productions Nathan had seen in movies. Owen was supposedly doing homework but was actually building an elaborate obstacle course for Rocket using lawn furniture. Victoria was reading on the back steps, coffee going cold in her mug. Nathan was supposed to be raking leaves, but instead found himself watching his family, marveling at how something so ordinary could feel so extraordinary. "Victoria," he said, and she looked up from her book. "Marry me." She blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Not eventually, not someday, soon. Because I don't want to wait anymore. Don't want to keep calling you my girlfriend when you're so much more than that. Don't want Owen to wonder where you fit when you fit everywhere." Victoria set down her book with shaking hands. "Nathan, you can't just... We've talked about everything else. Finances and parenting and whether we want more kids and what happens if I die first. The only thing we haven't talked about is when we're making this official." Nathan moved to kneel in front of her, taking her hands. "I don't have a ring, didn't plan this, but I'm asking anyway. Marry me, Victoria. Be Owen's bonus parent legally and officially. Be my wife. Be part of this family, not just in practice, but in name." "Dad, are you proposing?" Owen's voice came from across the yard. "Yes, buddy. Is that okay?" Owen abandoned his obstacle course and ran over, Rocket bounding behind him. "Are you saying yes?" he demanded of Victoria. I don't know. Victoria was crying, laughing, looking between Nathan and Owen like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. "You have to say yes," Owen insisted. "We already put you on the family tree. It would be really awkward if you said no now." "Owen's right," Nathan agreed. "We've already committed in poster board. That's legally binding in 9 states. "I don't think that's true," Victoria managed through tears. "Say yes anyway." She pulled Nathan up from his kneeling position and kissed him hard enough that Owen made gagging sounds. When they broke apart, Victoria was nodding. Yes, obviously, yes. Give me a minute to process that you proposed in your backyard wearing paint-stained jeans while I'm in sweatpants with coffee stains." "It's perfect," Nathan said. "We're not fancy people. We're sweatpants and coffee stains and backyard proposals. That's who we are." "We need to celebrate," Owen announced. "Can we get cake?" "We should get cake. All good celebrations involve cake." They piled into the car. Nathan, Victoria, Owen, and Rocket, who refused to be left behind, and drove to the bakery downtown. They bought an enormous chocolate cake that the baker decorated with "Congratulations" in pink frosting, and they ate it for dinner while sitting on the living room floor because Owen declared that celebrations required breaking normal rules. That night, after Owen was asleep and Rocket was snoring on his bed, Nathan and Victoria lay together in the center of their shared bed. We should pick a date, Victoria said. Make it official. What kind of wedding do you want? Small, just family and close friends, nothing elaborate, maybe the backyard? Nathan smiled in the darkness. The backyard where I proposed in paint-stained jeans? The backyard where we built a family, where Owen chases Rocket and we drink coffee on the steps and everything good started. Spring? Nathan suggested. April, maybe. Give us time to plan, but not so long we overthink it. April sounds perfect. They spent the winter planning a wedding that would be uniquely theirs, small, simple, focused on the people who mattered rather than elaborate decorations or expensive venues. Owen appointed himself head of music selection and created a playlist that was 70% Space Documentaries soundtracks. Mrs. Chen insisted on making the cake. Marcus Webb, surprisingly, offered to officiate after getting certified online, saying he wanted to be part of making honest people out of them. The whispers at Morrison and Fletcher had evolved into something like acceptance. People still talked, but the conversation had shifted from scandal to simple acknowledgement that the VP of operations was marrying an engineer from a different division. HR had signed off on their relationship disclosure forms without incident. Life continued, complicated but manageable. Victoria kept her therapist appointments, working through her fears about commitment and permanence. Nathan worked through his guilt about moving on, about being happy when Sarah wasn't there to share it. Owen navigated being 9 years old with a dead mother and a bonus parent who was becoming something more official, something permanent. They were imperfect and trying and mostly getting it right. The wedding happened on a Saturday in April. In the backyard, they'd transformed with string lights and borrowed chairs and flowers that Mrs. Chen had insisted on, despite Victoria's protests that they didn't need decorations. 40 people gathered, colleagues, neighbors, Owen's friends from school, and their parents. The small tribe of people who'd watched this unlikely family come together. Owen carried the rings with the solemnity of someone who understood the importance of the moment. Victoria wore a simple cream dress, Nathan a suit that actually matched, and when Marcus began the ceremony, both of them were already crying. "We're gathered here," Marcus said, "to celebrate two people who took the long way to finding each other, who built a family from grief and hope and the stubborn refusal to stay broken." Nathan watched Victoria's face as Marcus spoke, memorizing every detail, the way the spring sunlight caught in her hair, the tears tracking through her makeup, the smile that was joy and terror and absolute certainty all at once. "The rings," Marcus prompted, and Owen stepped forward, presenting them with pride. Nathan slipped the band onto Victoria's finger, the metal warm from Owen's careful holding. "I promise to love you through complications and coffee stains, through office politics and backyard proposals. I promise to never let you feel like a guest in your own home. I promise to build a life with you that's honest and imperfect and absolutely ours." Victoria's hand shook as she slipped Nathan's ring on. "I promise to be patient with your guilt and your grief. I promise to love Owen not as a replacement mother, but as someone who wants the best for him always. I promise to stay even when I'm terrified, to choose us even when it's hard, to believe that broken people can build beautiful things." Marcus pronounced them married and they kissed while their friends and family cheered, and Owen announced to anyone who would listen that he'd told his dad Victoria was the one months ago, and nobody believed him. The reception was casual, catered barbecue and Mrs. Chen's legendary chocolate cake, and Owen's space soundtrack, creating an atmosphere that was simultaneously elegant and absurd. They danced their first dance to a song neither of them remembered choosing, just swaying together while Owen and Rocket played in the background, and everything felt exactly right. Late in the evening, when most guests had left and cleanup was becoming inevitable, Victoria pulled Nathan aside. "I have something to tell you," she said, voice strange. Nathan's heart stuttered. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but I need to show you something." She led him inside to the bathroom and pulled out a small box from her purse. "I bought this yesterday. Haven't taken it yet. Wanted to wait until today." Nathan looked at the pregnancy test, then at Victoria, then back at the test. "But you said you didn't want kids." "I don't. Didn't. But then—" Victoria's hands were shaking so badly, Nathan took the test from her. "I'm late. 6 weeks late. 6 quites. And I thought maybe it was stress from wedding planning. But then I realized I couldn't remember the last time I wasn't exhausted, and certain smells have been making me nauseous, and do you want to take it now? I'm terrified." "We'll be terrified together." Nathan kissed her forehead. "Whatever it says, we deal with it. Together." Victoria took the test with trembling hands, and they waited the longest 3 minutes of their lives. When the timer went off, they looked together at the 2 pink lines that confirmed what Victoria had already known. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. "I'm pregnant, and I don't know how I feel about it." Nathan wrapped his arms around her while she cried into his shoulder, the same position they'd found themselves in countless times over the past year. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I've always been so certain I didn't want this, but now—" She pulled back to look at him. "What do you want?" "I want whatever you want. No pressure, no expectations. This is your choice, Victoria. Your body. Your life." "But it would be our baby, yours and mine, Owen's sibling, only if you want it to be." Victoria was quiet for a long time, one hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. "Can I have time to figure out how I feel without everyone having opinions?" "As much time as you need." They kept the pregnancy secret for 2 weeks while Victoria wrestled with the decision. She talked to her therapist, researched options, sat in the backyard for hours just thinking while Nathan gave her space, and Owen wondered why Victoria was so quiet lately. The decision came on a Tuesday evening when Owen was demonstrating his latest science project, a working model of the solar system he'd built from recycled materials. Victoria watched him talk about orbital mechanics and gravitational pull, his face bright with the kind of enthusiasm that made teaching worthwhile, and Nathan saw the exact moment when something shifted in her expression. "I want to keep it," she said later, after Owen was asleep. "Are you sure?" "No, I'm terrified. I'm going to be terrible at this. I don't know anything about babies except that they're expensive and loud and require not sleeping for years." Victoria took Nathan's hand, placing it on her stomach. "But I want to try. Want to see who we make together. Want to give Owen a sibling who shares DNA with both of us." "Okay. Okay, that's all you're going to say?" Nathan kissed her softly. "What else is there?" "You're choosing to expand our family. I'm honored and terrified and completely on board." They told Owen the following weekend, sitting him down with the seriousness the moment deserved. He listened as they explained about the baby, about how Victoria was pregnant, about how their family was growing. "Does this mean I have to share my room?" was his first question. "Not for a while," Nathan assured him. "The baby will be in our room at first." "Can we name it after a constellation?" "Maybe. Depends on the constellation. Andromeda if it's a girl, Orion if it's a boy." Victoria laughed. "I'm not naming our child Orion." "Why not? It's cool. And it means hunter. Hunters are cool." They compromised on adding constellation names to a list that would be revised approximately 700 times over the next several months. Owen took to the idea of being a big brother with enthusiasm, reading pregnancy books from the library and offering advice that was approximately 5% accurate and 95% well-meaning nonsense. The pregnancy was hard. Victoria spent the first trimester violently ill, working from home when she could, and barely making it through meetings when she couldn't. She hated every minute of it, the nausea, the exhaustion, the loss of control over her own body, but she never once regretted the decision. "I'm allowed to hate being pregnant while still wanting the baby," she told Nathan during a particularly rough week. "Those things aren't mutually exclusive." "Nobody said they were." "Society says they are. Like if you're not glowing and grateful every second, you're a bad mother." "You're not a bad mother. You're a human being having a physical reaction to growing another human being. That's allowed." The second trimester was better. Victoria's energy returned, the nausea faded, and she started actually looking pregnant instead of just exhausted. Owen talked to her stomach about constellations and Mars rovers. Rocket became protective, refusing to let Victoria walk anywhere without escort. Nathan fell more in love with his wife every day, watching her navigate something she'd never wanted but had chosen anyway. They found out the sex at the 20-week ultrasound. A girl, tiny and perfect, on the grainy screen. Owen immediately declared she should be named Andromeda or possibly Cassiopeia and would accept no alternatives. "We're not naming her after a constellation," Victoria said for the 100th time. "What about Nova?" Owen suggested. "That's space-related, but also sounds like a normal name." Nathan and Victoria exchanged glances. "Nova," Victoria repeated. "I actually kind of love that." "Really?" Owen bounced with excitement. "I get to help name my sister?" "You just did," Nathan confirmed. Nova Cole entered the world on a freezing December morning, 7 pounds of fury and perfect fingers, wailing her displeasure at being evicted from her warm environment. Victoria cried through the entire delivery. Nathan held her hand and forgot to breathe. And Owen waited in the hospital corridor with Mrs. Chen, pacing like an expectant father from a 1950s sitcom. When they finally brought Owen in to meet his sister, he approached the hospital bed with the reverence of someone approaching a religious artifact. "She's so small," he whispered. "You were this small once," Nathan said. "I don't remember being small. I've always been this size." Victoria laughed, exhausted and radiant despite 20 hours of labor. "Want to hold her?" Owen nodded seriously, and Nathan positioned him carefully, supporting his arms as Victoria placed Nova in them. The 9-year-old stared down at his infant sister with an expression that was pure wonder. "Hi, Nova," he said softly. "I'm Owen. I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you about stars and planets and how to throw a baseball and why Pluto should still be a planet, even though scientists say it's not." Nova yawned, unimpressed by her brother's promises, and Owen was instantly smitten. They brought Nova home 2 days later to a house that had been transformed by Mrs. Chen and half the neighborhood into a nursery-ready environment. The next several months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, of Owen helping change diapers with excessive enthusiasm and Rocket adjusting to a tiny human who occasionally grabbed his fur. Victoria struggled with postpartum depression that she'd been warned about but hadn't truly prepared for. There were days when she couldn't get out of bed, when holding Nova felt like holding a stranger's child, when the weight of what she'd chosen threatened to crush her. "I'm a terrible mother," she sobbed one night while Nathan walked Nova through the house, trying to settle her. "You're not terrible. You're struggling. There's a difference. I don't feel connected to her. I look at her and I love her, but I also feel nothing. How is that possible?" "Because your brain chemistry is adjusting, and you're sleep-deprived, and postpartum depression is real." Nathan sat beside her, Nova still fussing in his arms. "We're getting you help. Your therapist doubled your sessions. The doctor adjusted your medication. You're going to be okay." "What if I'm not?" "Then we deal with it. Together. Like everything else." Slowly, with medication and therapy and the relentless march of time, Victoria began to feel like herself again. The connection with Nova grew, not in the instant, overwhelming way she'd expected, but in quiet moments. A smile during a feeding, Nova's hand gripping her finger, the weight of her daughter asleep on her chest. "I think I'm starting to love her," Victoria told Nathan when Nova was 3 months old. "Not just intellectually love her because she's mine, but actually feel it. That's normal and allowed and perfectly fine." By Nova's first birthday, they'd settled into a rhythm that worked, chaotic and imperfect, but functional. Owen was a devoted big brother, entertaining Nova for hours with increasingly elaborate stories about space exploration. Rocket had appointed himself the baby's guardian, sleeping beside her crib, and alerting them to every sound. Nathan and Victoria tag-teamed parenting with the precision of a military operation, supporting each other through exhaustion and doubt. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they hired Mrs. Chen to watch both kids and went back to the Bistro where they'd had their first date. The chocolate torte was still illegal in several states. Victoria still ordered too much food so they could share everything, but now they talked about different things: Owen's upcoming middle school transition, Nova's first words, whether they needed to get a bigger car now that they were officially a family of 4. "Can you believe we've been married 5 years?" Victoria asked, stealing a bite of Nathan's salmon. "Can you believe we've known each other for 6? Feels like forever, and also like yesterday. I still remember the gala. You standing there looking like you wanted to escape. I still remember thinking you were terrifying." Victoria laughed. "I was terrifying. I'm still terrifying at work, but I'm trying to be less terrifying at home. You're perfect at home, imperfect, but perfect." They finished dinner and drove home to find Nova asleep in Mrs. Chen's arms and Owen showing her his latest school project, a detailed report on Mars colonization that was far too advanced for a 6th grader, but absolutely perfect for Owen. After Mrs. Chen left and Owen was in bed and Nova was settled in her crib, Nathan and Victoria stood in the doorway of the nursery watching their daughter sleep. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked quietly.
Choosing this. Choosing us. Every day, Victoria said, and when Nathan started to pull away, she grabbed his hand. I regret that I was so scared for so long. Regret that I almost let fear win. But I don't regret you, or Owen, or Nova, or this messy, complicated, beautiful family we built. Not even on the hard days? Especially on the hard days. Because the hard days prove it's real. That we're not some fantasy version of a family, but actual people trying our best. They moved to their bedroom, to the king-sized bed that had been too big for one, just right for two, and was now frequently invaded by a 9-year-old who still had nightmares and a 1-year-old who thought 3 a.m. was an excellent time to party. Is your bed big enough? Victoria asked, echoing Owen's question from years ago. Nathan pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and baby powder, and home. This bed's big enough. This life's big enough. This love's big enough. As long as you're the one beside me. Always, Victoria promised, through complications and coffee stains and everything in between. They fell asleep tangled together, and sometime around midnight, Owen appeared in their doorway, dragging his blanket. I had a bad dream, he mumbled. Come here, buddy. Owen climbed into bed between them, and shortly after Nova's cries came through the baby monitor. Nathan retrieved her, and suddenly their king-sized bed held 4 people. Nathan, Victoria, Owen, and Nova, with Rocket somehow finding space at the foot of the bed, despite physics suggesting otherwise. It was crowded and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. Nathan looked at his family. His son, who'd survived grief and found hope. His wife, who'd conquered fear to choose love. His daughter, who represented the future they'd built together. And felt the same thing he'd felt that night at the gala 5 years ago when Victoria had asked him to dance. The possibility that broken people could create something beautiful. That grief didn't have to be the end of the story. That hearts didn't split when they expanded. They just made room for more love. Dad? Owen whispered in the darkness. Yeah, buddy. This is nice. All of us together, like we're supposed to be. Yeah, Nathan agreed, meeting Victoria's eyes across their children. Like we're supposed to be. They fell asleep like that. 4 people and a dog in a bed that was simultaneously too small and exactly the right size, building a family that looked nothing like what any of them had planned, but everything like what they needed. Imperfect and trying and mostly getting it right. And in the morning, when sunlight streamed through the windows and Nova demanded breakfast, and Owen asked if they could get a bigger bed, Nathan and Victoria would look at each other and laugh and say, yes, maybe, we'll think about it. Because this was their life now. Complicated and beautiful and absolutely theirs. The story that had started with grief and a question about whether hearts could expand had found its answer, not in grand gestures or perfect moments, but in the ordinary magic of people choosing each other every single day, in Tuesday dinners and soccer games and backyard proposals, in space camp applications and family trees and beds that were always somehow both too small and big enough, in love that didn't replace but added, that multiplied instead of dividing, that proved again and again that the most beautiful chapters often began after everyone thought the story was already over.